Well, welcome back after our brief interlude there. I'll go ahead and call to order the City Council meeting. We will begin with the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation today is from Pastor Keith Hedlund with Bethany Baptist. Again, we'll follow with the pledge after that.
Heavenly Father, we are thankful for the community in which we live, for the things that make it special. We're thankful for the political interest in our community. We're thankful that while Las Vegas got only something of participation in the single digits, that almost half of our community voted in recent elections. We are thankful for this spirit of community involvement that's reflected in our community organizations, in our churches, in our school groups, and so on. We pray for our new leaders, asking that they would have wisdom and insight into our community. We pray for their involvement in regional groups as assignments will be given out. Give our leaders wisdom, understanding of the other leaders, understanding of the process, and give them wisdom in the issues that will come before these various boards. Pray that our leaders would be marked by integrity, that you would give them a strong conscience, that you would give them a sense of right and wrong. And many of the issues that come before this board don't necessarily involve right or wrong. They are matters of wisdom, so give them wisdom in these areas. Guide this body in its deliberations tonight. May there be a spirit of civility in all that transpires. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Hedlund, for those good words for us. Public announcements. We have one. I see a hand go up. Please come up.
Svetlana Stefanova, I'm the Director of Development for the Damn Short Film Festival. Every year we commission a local artist to design the following year's poster. This year we're actually doing a contest open to everyone to submit. The top prize is $500 cash plus 2 VIP passes and swag from the festival. There's also great prizes for second and third place, and every entrant gets 2 tickets to a program of their choice. So we're looking for a 12 by 18 format poster that either display something about the Hoover Dam, Boulder City, and or a Southern Nevada landscape. So we're open to all different styles of art, and we have all the guidelines on our website. If you want to look at all the previous posters, the website is damnshortfilm.org/posters. You'll be able to see all the previous posters we've had to give you kind of an idea of what we like. And also you'll see the contest guidelines. The deadline for submissions is August 1st. And then also we are still accepting film submissions, and the final deadline is November 1st. And all Nevada filmmakers, they have a fee of only $10. So we hope a lot of people submit, and we really love to support local artists. So thank you.
Thank you. Jill Lagan with the Chamber of Commerce regarding Restaurant Week.
Council, thank you. Jill Lagan with Boulder City Chamber of Commerce. I'm excited to be here to share a little bit about the first annual Boulder City Restaurant Week. So we saw that there were quite a few people who had some concerns back during the think tank days, and we had some individuals that expressed that they'd like to be a part of some of the solution to some of those concerns. And so one of our local restaurants, Miss Cindy Ford from the Southwest Diner, she decided that she was going to go out and look for some of those solutions. So she just made mention to one of her sales reps at Cisco that she had some concerns, and Cisco turned right around and said, "We will help you." And so I am really grateful that we have a partnership that we can help put together Boulder City Restaurant Week. That's what came of that conversation. And so this will be the first time that all of our restaurants will be able to have special menus with set prices, and it will be advertised on our website. And so it will be a really great way for people to come from the Vegas and Henderson area and check out our restaurants throughout that week. But it also helps our locals understand a little bit more about what we're doing in our restaurants. So I have with me Andrew Roth. He is from Cisco, and we're excited for this partnership, and I thought I'd let him say a few words just so he can kind of tell you a little bit more about the details.
Sure. Thank you. So this is separate from the Las Vegas Restaurant Week. It will be August 4th through August 10th, and we are asking that all restaurant operators, regardless of their business agreements with us, participate, because we are putting our entire marketing team behind this, and we're going to be spending the next 3 days out here with our chef, with our team, working with local businesses to make them aware of the benefits. And what is really more important to us is that we're giving back to Boulder City, and the funds and the foundations that go with every one of these meals is going to go towards ProStart and the Boulder City Chamber of Commerce. So it's important to us to really lean in here. We see a great opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for us to showcase the culinary talents that we have within Boulder City and bring those from other cities out here to experience that.
So with each of those restaurant meals that are purchased, a percentage will go back to either the Foundation ProStart or to the Boulder City Community Foundation. The foundation dollars that come back into Boulder City directly will go right into the high school scholarship fund. So it is a really great way for Boulder City residents and those visiting to be able to contribute to some of our educational goals that we have at the Chamber. But also, if they have their receipt after they purchase their meal, they can take it to multiple businesses and also receive a coupon or a discount. So that will also be advertised. So it's a great way to get people into all of our businesses and to highlight all the great things that we have out here in Boulder City. So we're grateful for partnerships. We're grateful for wonderful businesses like Cindy Ford that have thought through these great ideas and have found solutions to things that concern them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That sounds like a great partnership, and appreciation to Cisco for helping out with that. I do want to make note, I have not made note of it with the start of the council meeting, that Councilman Harhay is on the telephone and participating in the meeting. This time we will go to public comment. Uh-oh.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I do need to make an announcement. As you know, that the month of July, we only have one council meeting, and that poses somewhat of a logistical issue when we're trying to ensure that we celebrate certain anniversaries and major events. Last year, it was remiss of me that I did miss someone, and it was because I wasn't familiar with the schedule that it threw me completely off, and I didn't want to do the same mistake again. The next council meeting after tonight will be August 13th. It's the second Tuesday in August. And unfortunately, we will not be back in session after tonight to be able to celebrate another anniversary of one of our council members who unfortunately cannot be here personally, and I did not want to bring any shall we say, refreshments or other edibles, because perhaps maybe the current council might indulge and not leave anything for the individual that we are celebrating this to. So with that, I would ask the council and the rest of the audience if you could please join me to wish Councilmember Harhay a happy birthday. His birthday will be on August 3rd. But before we begin, Councilman Harhay, are you still there?
Councilman Harhay?
I think I already had a birthday celebration. that wound up on the front pages of the BC Review.
I'm sure you're grinning from ear to ear. So since you can hear us on 3, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lauren. Happy birthday to you.
At this rate, I'll be able to reach 100 before anybody else.
All right, we will then move to public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Each person has up to 5 minutes to speak on a specific agenda item. Again, as I had mentioned at the last meeting, we are going to allow the 5-minute period of time, and we do ask that each person be considerate of everyone else's time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on any agenda item? Ms. DeShane?
Judy DeShane. I just wanted to really make a comment. I see that the BC TAP is on the consent agenda, which is the electrical part of our utilities. And I saw that the total budget is 2.7 mil. And there's a $400,000 going out now. I was just wondering if we could keep a running total of what has been spent and what's left to be spent, so we don't wind up like we did with the water. The $2 million we were getting got spent 5 or 6 times. Well, not really, 2 or 3 times as of now. But just so everybody knows exactly what we've spent and how much is left to be spent according to budget items or what was estimated. Thank you.
Mr. Schuman?
Good evening, Mayor, staff, council. Good to be here. Notice you have an empty seat over there. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. It's a little different being on this side of the podium, but I'm glad to be here tonight. First off, I want to congratulate you all for the campaign that you ran and your victories. It was, I couldn't be here on the 25th. I was back in Boston with my mother, or I would have been here that night to see you get sworn in and congratulate you. So with that said, I want to make a case why I think I'm the best candidate for the appointment. I'm going to start with the idea that, you know, this is an elected position and that it's not an appointed position, and it should really come from the electorate. It should really come from voters. I thought to myself, what would I do if I was in your shoes and I had to appoint somebody in this situation? And you know, as Councilman Harhe mentioned that, you know, he would go to the special election. I think I probably would too, but in lieu of a special election, I would look at the most recent election. Ironically enough, we just had one, and so there was four of us running, and I think Councilwoman Levitt is enjoying her time away from council now with her family, and that really leaves me as the next vote getter in the most recent election. So during the primary and during the general election, I was, you know, many people came in and voted for me. So I think, you know, if we're looking at it purely from, you know, the position of votes, I definitely garnered thousands of votes. I mean, at least 1,000 in the primary, and I'm not sure what it was in the general, but just from that part alone, I think if I was in your shoes, I'd be looking at the next vote getter. I think it, you know, had the tables been turned, I would have ended up appointing Claudia or Mr. Adams, either one of you. So there's that. I also think that if I was on council and I had to make this decision, that I would first off tell myself to take the politics out of it, that this can't be a political decision. It's very difficult after all the political season we just went through and the elections we just went through. For me, it just can't be a political decision. It has to be a logical decision, and who makes sense to be on that council. I want you all to know that I want to do it. I absolutely want to do it. I've been doing it for the last 4 years. That's my next point, is that I have experience been doing it. I think experience matters on this council. I know that when I was first sitting up there, to have someone like Cam sitting next to me or a couple other experienced people on there meant a big deal. It helps to have somebody on council that has a little bit of time under their belt. And some of you do, Councilman Harhe and Mayor McManus, you definitely have some time. And but I bring that experience. I bring that track record. I bring the last 4 years of working through budget cycles and just that momentum. I know there's a push to talk about incumbents versus non-incumbents. I don't feel like an incumbent. I feel like a 4-year freshman councilman that still has work to do. And so I take it from that position too, that I think experience really matters, and the momentum that I've served on the council for the last 4 years should make a difference. Additionally, I've proven that I can do the job, so I have the ability to do it, without a doubt. I've been here for the last 4 years. I've made decisions. I've never missed a meeting, except maybe the second one when I got sick. Other than that, I've never missed a meeting. So I have the ability to do it. And there's another part that's important to me too. When I left council, I was the president of the Community Education Advisory Board. I have 5 children in these schools. I feel like as a council member on this council here, I would be the one representing that age 0 to 17 age group. That's my wheelhouse. That's where I hang out. I hang out at the rec fields, at the baseball fields, at the schools, talking to parents after school. I know the principals. I know the teachers. I have that input from those folks. And so I would hope that if I was appointed, that I could continue that fine work in that area with the kids, because that's important to me. It's an interesting decision. I can't wait to see how the deliberations go and where you come up with. I will say that I think I would work well with each one of you, that I won't ever disagree with you in a disagreeable way, that I'm easy to work with, that I'm kind of a middle of the road guy. I'm not too far on this side or this side. My vested interest is in Boulder City. It's in my future generations that I'm raising here. I'm a 4th generation Boulder City resident. I have good intentions, and I hope that you'll see fit to allow me to serve Mayor McManus's 2-year term. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else wishing to speak in public comment? All right, we will then move to the approval of the regular agenda. Madam City Clerk, any changes? No changes. Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No changes.
Council, any changes for the regular agenda?
No changes.
I'll entertain a motion then.
I make a motion to accept as it is.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous then. The consent agenda. Again, any changes, Madam City Clerk? Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No changes.
Council, any changes?
No changes.
All right. Again, a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Councilman Harhe?
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous then. All right, we'll move to item number 8 then. The first item on the regular agenda, presentation by General Manager and Chief Engineer Steve Parrish. Mr. Luttrell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Keegan Luttrell, Public Works Director. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're getting into the monsoon season. Fortunately, we've been lucky the last few months. But I do have the General Manager and Chief Engineer from the Flood Control District, Steve Parrish, to give a presentation on flash flood awareness.
Thank you. Thank you, Keegan. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving me a few minutes to talk here this afternoon. For the record, I'm Stephen Parrish, General Manager and Chief Engineer of the Clark County Regional Flood Control District. As Keegan mentioned, we are in flash flood season. July, August, and September is the 3 months of the year we worry about most in terms of flooding. This is the time of year we get the monsoon moisture that comes up from the Gulf of Mexico. It's a little late this year. It usually shows up right around July 1 almost every year. You can almost set your calendar by it, but a little late this year. We hear it's going to start rolling in probably by the end of this week, so we're expecting some activity pretty soon. So this time of year we try to reach out to all the boards and commissions, the city councils. We ramp up our outreach to the public to try to inform them that this is a dangerous time of year and that we need to be careful and vigilant when we're out driving in flooding conditions. So we're always saying don't drive through flooded areas. We actually were talking yesterday at our press conference about a 100-year storm event that we had in Las Vegas. It's the 20-year anniversary of a storm event that happened on July 8th, 1999. That storm didn't really affect Boulder City too much. It really affected Las Vegas and Clark County. But you've had some pretty big storm events here, and a couple of those pictures that you see there are actually in Boulder City. The left picture is Hemingway Channel, and I don't know if you can see it in the photo, but that arch is about 7 feet high and almost all of it's filled with sediment. That was after a big storm event in the 1990s. And then that roadway is another good example of why we say don't drive through flooded areas, because, and it may be hard to see again, but that road is actually undermined, and so the asphalt paving is hanging in there, but the support is gone. And so if someone drives over that, it's going to collapse and they're going to wind up in that water. And so we're always saying don't drive through flooded areas, even if it's just a few inches of water. You don't know what's underneath that roadway. So just to throw a few numbers at you, countywide, there's been 648 miles of channels and storm drains constructed in Clark County as part of the Regional Flood Control District program. Right here in Boulder City, 20 miles of channels and storm drains have been completed of that 648 miles of channels and storm drains. And in terms of detention basins, we just hit the century mark on detention basins. The 100th basin is being finished as we speak in Henderson. So there's 100 basins countywide. 12 basins are right here in Boulder City as well that have been completed construction. So again, countywide, that's a $1.8 billion investment in Clark County, an investment in flood control and improving the resiliency to flooding in this whole area. $33 million has been spent right here in Boulder City, and all that money actually flows right through the Public Works Department, either through design and construction of all these flood control facilities that you're seeing built around the city. But we have some work left to do. Here in Boulder City, 7 miles of channels and storm drains are left on the master plan to build. There's 5 detention or debris basins. We're showing 25 to 30 years. That's really for the entire master plan for the whole county. I would expect that probably the facilities in Boulder City will be built a little quicker than that. You don't really have that much left to do. You got, 5 detention basins and 7 miles of channels and storm drains, but for the most part, you're in pretty good shape. Some facilities were added with the last master plan, right by the high school in particular. The study showed that storm drain didn't have enough capacity, so some improvements are proposed there to enlarge that. Of course, there's facilities along Hemingway and North Railroad that have been completed, and we're still working on a few things there. So I've been talking a lot about channels and detention basins, and that's our mission, to keep floods away from people, but the other side of the house tries to keep people away from floods. So we need the help of the public to make good decisions when you're out driving or walking. Stay away from channels and storm drains. They're dangerous. You don't want to get caught up in those. So we're ramping up our flash flood safety campaign. You'll see billboards, TV ads, radio, lots of social media, Twitter, Facebook. Just to try to get that message out. You'll probably be sick of hearing from us by the end of the summer, but we want to get that message in your head to be safe when you're out there driving. Keep in mind, 6 inches of swift moving water can sweep you off your feet, and a foot of water is enough to float most vehicles. So it's just dangerous. Don't drive or walk through flooded areas. And with that, I'll say thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Sure. So obviously we're coming up here on flash flood season. So I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to the radio, and suddenly I hear, that noise, and flash flood warning. And it tells me, and I hear that it's in the area that I'm in. What do I do?
Well, Oh, if it's a flash flood warning, that means it's flooding somewhere. It may not be flooding where you're at, but it's in your area. So I would just say be vigilant. If it's raining where you're at, just be careful when you're driving. And if you start to see water flowing over the roadway or accumulation, it's best just to pull over and wait the storm out or find another route. Usually our storms only last a couple of hours, so go get a cup of coffee and wait it out. That's good advice. We've never had a fatality of someone who stayed at their house or in their business. It's always someone who drives into a channel or drives into a flooded area.
And what are, so like you said, you start to see the water coming because, these are flash floods. They kind of happen almost out of nowhere for a lot of people. They're sitting there 1 minute, it's raining. Next thing you know, you've got this huge accumulation of water. What should people be looking out for to help, keep that vigilance so that they can stay safe?
Well, there's lots of tools available to the public. Our website has active real-time rain gauge network, so you can log on to regionalflood.org before you leave the office, for example, and it'll tell you exactly where it's raining and how much. So that's a good idea to follow that. Of course, follow any social media. You can follow us on Twitter. We're always sending out. We're not in the business of warning people. That's the Weather Service's job. But we do take their warnings and forward them out to all the people that follow us on social media. It's another good. So just use your phone. We just developed, it's really pretty cool, a new virtual reality tool that we're using to try to reach the high school kids who are just starting to drive. And it's actually a pretty immersive experience where you put this on and you simulate driving into a flooded area and your car starts filling up with water. And it's pretty interesting. So you might want to check that out if you want. We're happy to let you view that on our.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Should have brought one with me.
I'd just like to, again, thank the effort of the flood district. When we look, especially down in our Hemingway Valley or the far south part of our town, there's been a lot done in those areas that, keep homeowners safe, keep drivers safe. We did have a situation here a few years ago with, a young person who thought, gee, it looks like a lot of fun to get down there in that storm channel. People lose their lives that way, and that's very unfortunate for something like that to happen. So when you see the water, there was a story last night going back even further about Nelson's Landing, and they interviewed some of the people who were there at the time. I believe there were 8 deaths that occurred there, and they said it was about a 40-foot wall of water that seemed to come out of nowhere and caused a lot of destruction. So for those of us who have been here a while, we know what these thunderstorms look like, but we sometimes forget that that street that looks okay may not be. And so thank you for all the warnings and advice.
Thank you for that. And that young man was very lucky. He was rescued, but he was going right down the channel. It destroyed his shorts, But that's about all he lost, so that's a success.
A little embarrassment's a lot better than losing your life. So
you got that right. Nelson's Landing was a big storm event. There was just a tremendous amount of rainfall, certainly greater than 100-year happened. And you're right, I think there were 8 deaths and pretty much wiped Nelson's Landing right into the Colorado River. So yeah, it's huge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to item number 9, presentation and legislative update by Communications Manager Lisa LaPlante.
Good evening. I don't have any interesting stories about shorts, but I do have some interesting information about the legislative session, the 80th legislative session, which wrapped up in June. I am Lisa LaPlante, the Communications Manager for the City of Boulder City. First and foremost, I'd like to take a minute to thank our team, our leadership here at the city, and mention what a great job they did in helping us make sure that we were taking a look at every individual piece of legislation that could have an impact on Boulder City. We made sure that if there was something that was going to impact us, that we were reacting to it. I also want to take a moment to thank Lisa Foster and her team. She's our contractor who is up in Carson City. She knows her way around the legislative halls better than anyone else, and she was able to really help us on some of these items that we're about to take a look at. So the first one we're going to look at is how many bill drafts were submitted. 1,259 were submitted for drafting during the months leading up to the session. That led to 991 bills being introduced, 38 resolutions. 214 bills and resolutions were tracked by Lisa Foster and her staff on behalf of Boulder City. These are bills that we took a look at and we said we need to keep an eye on these because they could have a good impact or a negative impact. We wanted to make sure we were on top of all of that as we went along. And once again, I can't even tell you how many times on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays I would reach out to our staff and say, we need to have an answer on this right away. We only get 120 days. It's a short shot, and we have to make sure that we're staying on top of things. Our staff was always available, responded quickly, and made sure that we were taking care of getting information to Lisa Foster or putting together information so that we could make sure that we were covered and didn't end up in a bad position. So a few of the wins that we had, I'd like to start with AB 50. This would have ordered municipalities onto the same election cycle as state cycles. However, we had approved a code amendment in 2018 to change our election cycle. So any change that the legislature would have brought to us would have disrupted our ongoing process, creating unequal terms for new council members, which could lead to potential legal issues. Lorene Crum, Lisa Foster, and I lobbied, and we were able to amend Boulder City out of that bill. So we're able to continue moving forward the way we had asked to move forward through our passage of that code amendment in 2018. AB 282. This would have required communities to develop wards for voting purposes. Wards can be helpful in large cities. However, it's found that they are not as helpful in smaller cities. As a matter of fact, the National League of Cities says about 26% of small cities use ward voting. It can also create some racial and socioeconomic divisions that in the population, and so it's just not as successful in small towns. Lisa Foster, Al Noel, and I voiced our opposition to it. We shared our concerns with Assemblyman Glenn Levitt, who shared his concerns with it with the committee, and Assemblywoman Ellen Spiegel amended and removed Boulder City from it. As of today, the only city that actually did pass it was the city of Henderson. So AB 282 did pass, but it only lists the city of Henderson. This one was an interesting one because it pulled in law enforcement as well as our municipal court. What it said was, after 5 years of non-payment, fees, fines, and restitution would be forgiven. And we were concerned about a lack of penalty for those who might wait it out. So what we did is we voiced our concerns. Judge Miller got involved. City Attorney Steve Morris voiced his opinion as well. Assemblyman Steve Yeager actually did go ahead and make some changes based on some of the things that we had suggested. It is now a 7-year term when an amount is deemed uncollectible. It allows a driver's license suspension if a person can pay and is just trying to avoid a payment. And it also finds that if a person is really just unable to pay, if they're indigent, if they are receiving public assistance, residing in public housing, have a household income of less than 200% of the federally designated poverty level, or are housed in a private or public mental health facility, that they won't be responsible for it during that time. So it kind of takes the onus off of somebody who doesn't necessarily, who would want to pay it, but may not be able to. And my personal favorite, AB 84. As you all know, Governor Steve Sisolak signed a bond reauthorization bill that allows for funding for state museums. We worked very hard on this. The bill passed in the Assembly 39-0 and 20-1. That testimony that was provided mentioned that $25 million should be set aside for the Boulder City Railroad Museum. And so this was great because it also made mention of Boulder City Linear Park. So in all, it's a $35 million project, and we were able to get at least $25 million set aside for a new 9,700 square foot visitor center, boarding platforms, and that linear park that will have children's interactive amenities. We do have a little bit more of cleanup to do with AB 84. As I mentioned, we still need about $10 million, but we also are trying to make sure that with AB 84, that bond reauthorization, that we are a priority in that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to meet with the Interim Finance Committee in the coming months to request $2 million of the 200, it's actually 217 million, to request $2 million potentially be used for us to go ahead and get the final plans done. There's some preliminary plans that you've probably seen floating out there. Those don't include the engineering. So it's going to cost about another $1.8 to $2.2 million to finish those plans. We're hopeful that once we have those plans finished, it will move us up on the priority list for everything that is going to be happening with the $217 million. Those projects range wide variety of plans, including northern Nevada. Much of it, though, about 55% of it is actually going to be spent in southern Nevada on different projects here. But what we also want to do is we want to continue to monitor AB 84. There is approximately $110 million in there that is not earmarked. And so we have an opportunity to take a look at what we could possibly do, maybe with some improvements at Bootleg Canyon or other city park sites, as long as the money is spent in a park setting or in a space where it relies on cultural tourism, we might be able to get additional funding from that. The last time they did the authorization, it was called Q1, and that was in 2001, and that funding has lasted since then. So this $200 million, once they start getting the funding into the state, we're probably looking at another 15 to 20 years for them to spend it. So this is a project that could last for literally decades, 2 decades. And that's all I've got. There is some information that was in the agenda packet, and we'll be posting that online tomorrow. It is a report from Lisa Foster, and it basically gives an update on some of the legislation that she did track for us. We didn't want to go into too many details and go into too many of the bills, but quite a few that would have had an impact in and around Boulder City are listed in her report, and that will be available on bcnv.org tomorrow. And with that, do you have any questions?
Thank you. Council?
This is not so much a question, but I just want to thank you for that comprehensive report and the slide presentation. I think it's amazing. I had no idea how much impact our representatives going to the Congress, going up to Carson City, would have on this town. I knew we had a lobbyist. I didn't realize how effective having a lobbyist was.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Yeah, and the fact that you could have an effect on the actual bills and have them apply to or not apply to Boulder City is pretty amazing. So I want to thank you very much for your report
I appreciate
and all of your involvement in that.
Thank you.
I did have one brief question. We kind of went over it in briefing. I wasn't too sure. So it was regarding SB 388,
okay.
Which mostly revolved around the use and storage of personal digital information, mostly as it ties into smart city initiatives. Doesn't really affect us too much here right now, but even if you go over the hill into Las Vegas, you can use an app to pay for your metered parking, things like that. So obviously, as we move towards the future and these apps and technology and stuff, with the convenience also comes a lot of personal information that can be tracked. So I guess my question is for people just to kind of have the information, should they choose to kind of participate in some of these programs, what rights do they have to their own personal information, and what rights might they be kind of waiving should they want to, use some of these technologies?
It's a catch-22 for anybody who uses some of the tracking apps. If you walk into a place and you check in, for example, that information is automatically stored by the business. Here with the smart cities, people driving down the street who might park at a certain casino for too many hours, that kind of information could be potentially embarrassing for that person. So it's to make sure that they're protecting that information so that it doesn't get out to a wider audience. One of the other things that this bill does that I thought was really important is that it requires local governments to, when they destroy information, they can't just take the flash drive and toss it in the trash. They have to make sure that they're erasing it properly. So it makes sure that it gets rid of all records. And so it also falls into requirements of handling of government information as the state requires it. So different municipalities can't handle it differently. It sets one standard for how everybody handles that information.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilman Harhay, did you have any questions or comments on the presentation? Councilman Harhay? Okay. Well, I just had a couple of things. One, the museum funding is certainly great news for Boulder City. I know that Randy Heath, Scott Dam, others that have been involved with the museum out there have been working on this for a long time. Talking with the museum director, Peter Barton, last year, this was at the top of his list as well. So hopefully when that bond money does start coming in, we do have the support there. I recall talking to Governor Sisolak prior to his election. He understood how important it was for Boulder City and obviously supported that as well. I know that this has been a new experience for yourself, for the city manager. Our legislature only meets every 2 years. We kind of forget that they do that. But they do get together and they have a lot of influence over what we do in our community. So I'm sure you're already aware of it, but there's nothing like planning. So even though it's now a year and a half away, I can recall coming back from a League of Cities meeting where we were told cities had the ability to do their own bill draft reviews. That seemed to be news to a lot of people, but those are important things for the community. And to be able to get those, get it agreed upon, get the information there, be making the contacts, make sure all the legislators that are going to be making the decisions are aware of it. I'm sure they're enjoying some time off right now after their session, but we do want to keep them informed of what's important to us as well. So again, I appreciate the job that you did. I know you made many trips up there, phone calls, all of that, as well as other city staff. Again, we seem to have come out very well on this session, so thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item number 10 now for possible action, consideration of bill number 1853, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City amending an agreement. I don't have to read all the actual numbers and stuff, do I? Yeah, good. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Armentrout.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Brock Armentrout, your contracts real estate manager. This is a lease to extend the performance period for CenturyLink. They have communication facilities on top of Red Mountain. Their original lease was signed back in 2012, and it was, 2010. It's for a 5-year lease that had 4 5-year option periods that they could exercise. This is the exercise of the second of those 4 5-year option periods. This will take the lease through December 31st of 2024. It does have an annual escalator of 3% per year, rounded up to the nearest whole dollar. Over the next 5 years, the city expects to realize a little over $159,000 in rent. At such time then in 2024, I'm sure they'll be coming forward to exercise the third of the 4 5-year options. Staff has adjusted the performance period so that it falls on the half year. The finance department is moving with an effort to have all of our leases as they come up for renewal or new leases so that they have their anniversary dates on the half year, either December 31st or June 30th, so that as it's time to calculate their increases, it doesn't fall, say, like on November 10th, and we have to prorate, and it creates a headache for both their system and our system to come up with the proper number. By having it fall on the half year, it helps us ensure that we have proper budget forecasting as well as the appropriate calculations for their increases. That said, city is recommending that we approve this option exercise.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council?
I have no questions or comments.
Mr. Harhay? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion then.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Harhay? Councilman Harhay, are you still there? Shows the call's active. Okay. Well, with that, the vote's 3 in favor of passage, so. Okay, we'll move to item number 11. Mr. Harhay?
We have to.
Yeah, my vote was aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
That makes it 4-0 then.
I was about to clarify if it's 3 votes, it actually would have failed because under our charter, any land leases or sales require 4 votes. So
Thank you for the
thank you
clarification.
for calling back, Mr. Hardy.
All right, we'll move to item number 11 then, for possible action, Resolution 6962, resolution of the City of Boulder City approving a final map for Unit 2 of Boulder Hills Estates.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Mays.
Mayor and members of the City Council. Michael Mays, Director of Community Development. Boulder Hills Estates subdivision is being developed by Storybook Homes. The subdivision is located south of Adams Boulevard and east of Bristlecone Drive. You can see the exhibit highlighting the location of the development. It's proposed as a 3-phase development. The tentative map for the entire 30-acre subdivision was approved by the City Council on February 13th of 2018. The final map for Phase 1 was approved by the City Council on March 13th of 2018. Storybook Homes is now seeking approval of Phase 2. As you can see on the exhibit on the screen, that is the area in teal. It contains 11 acres and 45 lots. The final map that is for your consideration tonight is in conformance with the tentative map. And Resolution 6962 is for your consideration this evening to approve Phase 2 of the subdivision. James Cooper with Storybook Homes is here to answer any questions, as well as I.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
The only question I had was regarding the park space. I know a family that lives in the area, and that was one of their questions was regarding the amount of park space that they were going to have, whether it might have amenities for children or if it was going to be more generally open. It was a curiosity, so I guess that was really my only real question regarding that.
Okay, and I could certainly have Storybook come up and respond to that directly. There are 3 parks planned for the entire subdivision. And they can talk about some of the amenities.
Perfect.
James Cooper, Storybook Homes. I'll have to get back with you on the amenities for the parks. We do have 3 park areas total. 2 of them will be with the Phase 2 development, one a little bit larger than the other. But I'll be happy to get back with you with the landscape plans and the amenities proposed for the larger park. Any other questions?
Mr. Hardy, did you have any questions or comments regarding this final map for Phase 2?
No questions.
I just have one. It's more of a clarification that, and this is directed to Mr. Mays. The tentative map was approved sometime last year. That included a number of variances from our current codes. I believe those were front setbacks for approximately 75% of the homes was reduced. A couple of the lots were, because of the shape of the lot, did not meet the minimum horizontal width. And the later variance was provided for RV garages, and the streets are narrower than what was recommended within our existing code. I don't recall others. There may have been other variances. But what my question is, we're not going to be redoing any of that. Is that correct? We're not looking into that? That's been approved under that previous map?
That is correct, and that is a good summary of the variances that were granted, and they apply to the entire subdivision.
Okay. The other question is, we had talked about when the money's going to hit the account. This is phase 2, so Storybook Homes has already purchased phase 1. This will be the second phase, and we're still anticipating going forward with phase 3, I guess in, what, 18 to 24 months, or?
I think ballpark, that's about right, 15, 18 months.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
The only thing that I had, City to receive 638 square foot area, that was a jog line. Yes?
That's true.
Didn't allow for a consistent line as a public easement.
There was an extension of the property that we're purchasing that it kind of extended into the landscape area along Adams, and it was irregularly shaped lot, and it just seemed like it should probably go back to Boulder City and be part of the landscape area. It was a big jog in the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
No comments for me.
I have no other comments.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now move to item number 12 for possible action, discussion, and possible staff direction regarding the position of Historic Preservation Officer. This was an item that I had requested. Mr. Mays, you had provided some additional information on the need or purpose of this position. Is there something that you would like to present on that?
Thank you, Mayor. The Historic Preservation Planner was a new position that was budgeted for fiscal year 20. And its proposed creation was to respond to 2 of the strategic plan goals contained in the 2025 Boulder City Strategic Plan. One of them was under Goal D, promotion of historic preservation. Strategy 2, develop a historic preservation plan. Action item step 1, create a historic preservation cultural affairs division and hire a manager. In addition, there was a separate goal, Goal A, to achieve prudent financial stewardship. Strategy 5, supporting nonprofits and volunteer groups. And so with these goals in place, staff looked at how best we could provide that support to successfully implement those goals. There's 3 real areas to the purpose of this position. The first is obviously to successfully implement the important historic preservation goals that have been outlined within the strategic plan over the next several years, including the creation of a historic preservation plan specifically, and implementation of any additional responsibilities that staff would have to accomplish those goals. Secondly is to have a position that's dedicated to supporting nonprofits within the community. We've had expressed interest by nonprofits over the years. regarding different city facilities, and we saw an opportunity for this individual to provide that support to the nonprofits. Third, we saw an opportunity because of the current workload with the existing city planner who currently oversees the Historic Preservation Committee and staffs that. Also provides support to Community Development Block Grant and administers those grant programs, to be able to shift those responsibilities to this position so that not only the city planner can be more efficient and effective in that individual's responsibilities, but then provide additional support to the Historic Preservation Committee through this new position. In summary, we provide information that looks at three options in response to this agenda item. The first is to continue with the hiring of the Historic Preservation Planner. The second is to look at a third party to provide those services. And the third is to maintain the status quo. From staff's perspective, it's important to have additional resources to successfully implement the city's goals as it relates to historic preservation and support of nonprofits. But also we believe that through this position and the expertise that would come with it, it would be an opportunity to provide additional resources to this effort. And certainly I can answer any questions.
I appreciate that. I had requested this item. When we initially discussed this during the development of our strategic plan, I had indicated at that time that I felt there were a number of things that the city could do which would not require a dedicated position for this. We do have a preservation committee that has been in place for a number of years now here. We do have people on that committee that are well informed about preservation efforts and what is needed. We will be getting shortly to an agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office for what's called certified local government, which would also potentially give us some additional resources available to preservation efforts. Preservation, I think, is critical for a city like Boulder City. In not only the community that we live in, that people want to live in. A survey was conducted last year. The support for preservation was overwhelming by the residents that responded to that. I believe the number of responses was somewhere over 800 to that survey. I also feel that it is a driver for many of our businesses here, that it's the history of Boulder City, Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, that attract a lot of visitors here to our community. I also don't think the city's done a very good job over the years. Our historic district, the survey I believe was started in 1982 to determine the historic district. There were efforts made to develop ordinances that would achieve preservation within our zoning codes. The codes that were adopted had been watered down and never actually made the commitment that we were going to make preservation something that this city would accomplish. I think that those are all things that we can do without hiring an additional employee. There may be cases where we will need to contract with consultants for work. We know that one of the things that's most important for us at this point is to resurvey our historic district. Again, that survey was done, I believe, starting in 1982. The recommendation from the Park Service, who writes the guidelines for historic districts, had indicated that surveys should be done every 10 years to determine what the status of a district is. Again, we've not gone back to look at that historic district now for decades, and it has changed considerably. So I think one of the first things that would be done, and it would not be done by a preservation officer, these are, the surveys are normally conducted on a contract basis with companies that specialize in that type of work. That's how the first survey was done, the initial survey. That's something that I think we can accomplish without the addition of an additional person dedicated to this. I understand the need to get expertise. But again, I point to some of the resources we have that exist on our Preservation Committee. If it's necessary to get additional information regarding code improvements, that type of thing. Again, I looked at the figures that you have. I think your figures are well over $200,000 for a consultant. That would be if we were to hire a full-time consultant for the city. I think many of these things can be contracted out for specific purposes that we need without having someone full-time serving those interests. There are no other communities right now in the state of Nevada that have a full-time preservation officer. Even Las Vegas, that I believe is up to 12 historic districts now, they've not had a full-time person. They have had a person, but my understanding was that that person, their duties were split among other responsibilities within the city of Las Vegas. They were not devoted full-time to preservation efforts. When we look at what we need to do in this community, you know, there may be some point in the future where we say a preservation officer is necessary. I don't think we're at that point now, because I don't think we've done even the basic things that we need to do over several decades now that would still require consultants to come in and do the work that needs to be done, such as a resurvey. We may find when that survey is done that there are areas that are currently within the district that no longer meet the guidelines for including in a historic district. That's something that would be determined by that survey and not necessarily by a preservation officer. You had mentioned some things like working with the nonprofits in town. You know, we've added additional people to our staff, and I'm wondering if we can't find some of those other people to work on things like the community development block grants, which is one of the things you mentioned. Other things that are in there that you had mentioned were working with these nonprofits. We have requests from some of them. They're looking at underused or non-used city facilities. Again, I don't feel that we need a full-time person to work that type of thing out. We've already contracted with a consultant to provide that information to the city on their recommendations for it. So some of that work has already been completed. When we look at this, I just feel that we've not made the effort within our existing resources, and for a community of 16,000 people to make a commitment that we're going to hire a full-time person when there are no other cities within the state of Nevada that currently have such a position. I believe we can do this in a much more reasonable manner for our taxpayers. I think we already have the expertise that we are not drawing in. As an example, the meeting for the Preservation Committee was canceled this month without, you know, conferring with the members if they had things to discuss. I know from attending those meetings, they would like to discuss some of these things. The current chair of that committee seems to spend an awful lot of time on marketing efforts, efforts to create new districts rather than looking as to how we can protect our current district. Again, I just feel that with direction, we can accomplish an awful lot of this without this position. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to other members of council to get their thoughts on this, and then we can try and wrap up the item.
Would you like to start?
I have a question.
Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, the question is, are you, I thought we had settled this matter at the last council meeting by a 3-2 vote in the affirmative. And I'm just wondering, are we opening this up for reconsideration?
That's precisely my point, yes.
All right, well, one thing that I would like to add, at least from my standpoint, originally I voted in the negative for this position, but at such time as I received additional information from staff, as well as talking to Mr. Goya, which I think individual you're talking about, I've been convinced that that my vote in the negative was the wrong vote, and I would vote in the affirmative if it was to come before. And I think this also sets a bad precedent for council to revisit things that have already been settled by a vote of council.
Anything further?
No.
Others?
Okay, yeah, I will talk a little bit about. Obviously, historic preservation is of huge importance here to Boulder City. It rightfully was put on the strategic plan. It's been ignored for a long time here in Boulder City, and so it is time that we do take some action. But I am very torn on this because on the one hand, I understand staff's desire to have somebody with the technical expertise, the technical knowledge, to help them implement some of these things. But on the other hand, I feel like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. You know, we don't have a historic preservation plan right now. We don't have any real policies in place to help push us forward. And so we're looking to maybe bringing this full-time position in with almost an empty playground for, whatever. So I was kind of going over looking at our historic preservation as it is talked about in the strategic plan, and it has 8 goals and there are 8 strategies. The first one, develop a mission statement based on state and national standards. I don't think that we necessarily need a full-time position to come up with a mission statement, especially one based on state and national standards. I mean, there are standards for a reason. It's routine. Develop a historic preservation plan. Obviously, I think that would revolve around, having surveys done, because we do need to update and see where we're at right now. More outreach, community hall meetings like Mayor McManus had said. There is a lot of interest. A lot of people participate in these forums that were revolving around town hall. So that could be something that maybe having a outside contractor could, much like we did with the strategic plan, could help us with that. Explore adding new historic districts. That is something that obviously time is of the essence. If we put things on the back burner, they can come up, things could happen before we get there. But at the same time, that is something that the Historic Preservation Committee has been talking about, especially regarding the airport. It's something that could probably be included with the survey that we are going to do. Amend existing codes to achieve preservation goals. And that's pretty much that's the responsibility of the city council, to set those policies, to amend the codes, getting that. So that's something that the city council does, also having the Historic Preservation Committee to discuss, looking at those things. So just there in the first 4 things, I don't see the need necessarily for a full-time paid position. Then we get to number 5, identify financial incentives to promote historic preservation. 6, promote economic development through historic preservation. Develop educational campaigns. And then 8 is identify historic buildings to repurpose and reuse. Though that's where I start to see, the potential for needing somebody with that expertise to help kind of develop some more of those aspects that the city goes. I guess I'm just a little concerned that we've got this, we've taken out the old car out of the garage, and we're just gonna, throw a brick on the accelerator and hope we got the right person behind the wheel. I personally would like to see us start on some of these and making real moves so that when we do get down the line and see the need, and we've kind of set a goal more or less. We have all these strategies, but we don't really have any policies to guide them. So I would like to see us having those before we bring in a full-time paid position to cover that. When I was researching other communities that have done that, a lot of them first go to they go out and they contract to third parties, and they help them develop. And then after getting an idea of where the work actually is, what work needs to be done, then after they've done that after a couple of years and identified those things, that's when they go in and they get the historic preservation planner or historic preservation officer. A number of cities have different things. So that's where I'm at. I'm obviously curious to see hear some of the other deliberation, because once again, I get it. I understand the staff's desire to have that, and we are going to have to put our money where our mouth is eventually, because that's what it requires. But there are things that I think that we can do as a council with our current thing to start to get the ball rolling, and then once we've done that, come back and look at that.
I'd like to just add one thing, and that is, if there's a community that's got the procedure for putting things on the back burner, this one is it. And all I have to say is electric utilities. The rest of my case.
Okay, I have received that memorandum, and within it there were 3 options. And the option 1 was hire a historic preservation planner, and I too went and did a lot of homework on that to find out what other communities had full-time historic preservation planners, and they were large communities. They were cities of hundreds of thousands of people. They were not small communities. However, I knew that we had decided that that was something we were going to do. And then we looked at the utilization of a third-party consulting firm or a contract person to do this. And whereas the hourly rate, the annual rate for a contract employee is much higher, hiring a full-time employee is an ongoing commitment. And I know right away it seems like there's a lot of work that needs to be done by a somebody. I'm not sure whether this is a long-term commitment in terms of how many hours that person would be required to do next year and the year after that and the year after that. I looked at the fact that the next issue that we're going to be talking about in terms of certified local government, that they offer technical assistance. On the flip side of that is how many hours per month does it require in order to maintain that certification. I guess I'm going with option number 2 because I think it's important to have somebody who's got that expertise right away. If we go ahead in the CLG, and in terms of surveying what we have, in terms of overseeing policy development and knowing what other cities have done rather than having a full-time employee right away. I don't think it's something that should be given up on, but I am concerned that we may only need the expertise of somebody who is right now able to do the surveys, do the CLG work, as opposed to having to bring somebody up to speed here. I think we need somebody. Again, I'm not sure that long-term employment commitment is necessarily the solution today. Like I said, I did a lot of work. I looked all over the country at the size of cities that had brought in full-time historic preservation planner. It seems like a lot of cities have done that, but again, they're large communities with multiple historic areas. So that was my 2 cents, that I felt that a outside employment contract employee or a consultant as opposed to a full-time employee.
Well, with that, I'll try and put this into some type of a motion then. At this time, the position should be put on hold, the hiring for the position. I know that posting has already been done. Applications have already been received. I believe, I'm not sure what the procedure is in this case, but to notify those people that we are looking at the position and reconsidering it. So that would be the first part of the motion, that at this time, the hiring of that person be put on hold. There seems to be discussion among city staff. Okay. Again, the hiring of the position be put on hold at this time. The Preservation Committee be directed to produce a list of priorities over their next 2 meetings to report back to council on what they believe is most significant as far as the process that we should use. And at that time, we would be in a position to make further recommendations. Also, that city staff be requested to provide a list of priorities that they feel is necessary to move forward with producing preservation efforts here in Boulder City.
Mayor, for clarification, so you're asking, or your motion would say that the committee would work independently, provide the council their priorities, and then staff would work independently and provide their priorities?
Well, hopefully there would be some coordination there. It doesn't appear there's been a lot of coordination in the past. I think that would be an excellent way to do it, is to have city staff and the committee work together on developing those priorities. But I specifically would task the committee at their next 2 meetings to make it a priority within their agendas to come up with that list of priorities that are necessary.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I understand. So you, in your proposed motion, is that you're directing the committee to provide the council the priorities on how to move forward with your strategic plan initiatives under the goal of historic preservation?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that I also am clear that this is a council city manager form of government that's part of the operations and maintenance of the city. And so now you may be potentially violating the responsibilities of the city manager and city staff in moving forward in the operations and maintenance. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear as to what you're asking to be done.
Please be specific on what your objection is.
The operations and maintenance of the city is the responsibility of the city manager and the city staff. We do work with the committees. The committees advise, but it does require the input and the assistance of city staff. This is why we're concerned that by moving forward with the committees without staff input, that's why I wanted clarification. If you wanted 2 separate priority lists, then it does appear that you're getting direction from 2 different sources. If you want us to coordinate, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand how you want us to move forward.
Well, again, my reading of the charter is that these committees are formed to inform council. That is the purpose of these committees. The committees are formed by charter authority by the council to support the council in understanding and making decisions. They do not have decision-making abilities in most cases, but they have been tasked or may be tasked by a city council to do specific things and make specific recommendations back to council. I believe that's their function as defined within the city charter.
I have a question for the city clerk.
Go ahead, Warren, or Councilmember Harvey.
Yeah. In the past, how many times can you enumerate that the council has reconsidered a motion immediately after passing it in the next meeting over? Is that a commonplace thing? Or is it, because I don't remember it ever being brought up in my first period of service here.
Councilmember Harhay, to my recollection, it has not been done. That doesn't mean it cannot be done.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer. Could someone closer to the unit give me the answer?
I'll pass along what Madam City Clerk said. She said to her recollection, it had not been done, but that did not mean that it could not be done.
I understand that. All right.
I would like to add that City Council did vote to potentially put on the ballot to sell the historic or the old hangar, and at that point in time, I believe at the next council meeting, or maybe it was one after that, the council did then vote to remove it. That was shortly after that had happened. So the city council had voted, and then that's at least my recollection.
That's a little different than this item. This is a much more complex item because it's not just a matter of holding the position. It is a matter of amending our budget, and it is a matter of amending our strategic plan and our implementation plan.
Then I would ask an opinion from the city attorney. Do we then need to go back into the budget and delete this position?
Yes, so we don't run afoul with Section 11 of the charter. That would be my recommendation to the council, that if you do not want to fill this position after it has already been approved by a prior council, the appropriate action would be to go back into that budget and remove this, defund this position, and remove it in its entirety instead of giving a directive to simply not fill the position.
Okay, and then if a year, 2 years down the road, we decide, okay, we're now in a position, we've made a decision, we're ready to go forward with this position, or at least consideration of it, that could then be done within the constraints of whatever budget we have at that time.
Correct.
Okay, well, then I will amend what I have said, the two motions. First motion would be a directive to have a resolution to remove this position from the budget.
I'll second.
Well, hang on. Let me finish. The second motion would be to direct the Preservation Committee to include on their agenda the formulation of a priority list of what they believe needs to be done to move preservation forward over the next 2-year period. And again, so as not to run afoul of the city charter, we would encourage city staff to participate in that, but that's up to the city manager to make that decision.
How would this affect our relationship with SHPO?
I'd ask.
We need a second before we can have any further discussion, please.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second for both motions?
Yeah, I'm a little confused right now. Is there, so there's a motion on the table. Is there one motion? Is there two motions?
There should only be one motion on the floor at a time, right. So it can be one big motion, I guess.
Well,
what's the vote on?
We're still formulating the motion, Mr. Harhay.
Actually, I take that back. Because they're different, very different, we need two separate motions, please.
Okay, then as I had said, first motion will be, we will request from city staff a resolution to amend the budget to remove the position of Historic Preservation Officer at this time.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Can I
yes,
ask
go ahead.
I'm sorry. In the event we decided to utilize a third person, consulting firm or contract employee, how would that fit into the budget?
Currently, we don't have any funds to support that. The budget would need to be amended to accommodate that. And Mayor McManus, I guess, so that staff has better direction, I would assume that part of what you're looking for, both with the responsibilities and priorities coming out of the Historic Preservation Committee, is also an understanding of what that will cost. Because if we're going to look at third party, because again, currently with the current position, that position does not, the city planner does not have any additional capacity to support historic preservation efforts. So we'd be looking to third party to support all of these functions. We would come back and provide information on the estimate of what that would cost so we can amend the budget accordingly.
I was going to suggest that maybe we hold off on removing the position because we may want to add money to fund an independent consultant. So just shift the money.
I still think we would need to remove the position from the budget and separately. I mean, I understand Mrs. Pelletier's look from the finance side of it, but I think from the legality side of it, we would need to remove that position.
That would be cleaner, I believe, to remove that position, and then, as Mr. Mays had mentioned, that an estimate would be provided to amend the budget to add any consulting work that may be deemed necessary.
Okay.
Question, would that be done at a separate meeting, a separate time, an agenda item?
Well, yeah, it would. We could do it during the same meeting. We could put it on the agenda for the same meeting, right?
So that we could discuss, where we discuss amending the budget, remove the position, and then also at that same meeting discuss potentially looking towards a contractor.
Correct.
Okay. I'm much more comfortable with that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second then to remove this position from the budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Carries 3-1.
I'd like to explain that. My nay vote is essentially not directly related to the issue, but of course it has to be. But it's against setting a precedence where we unravel a duly adopted position of city council without the receipt of any new information. And to get back to my earlier question, there was an instance where council reversed itself, and that was in the area of the selling of the airport hangar as to whether it should be put on the ballot. And the new information was that the city manager had informed council that a inventory of all the historic buildings was underway, and it would be inappropriate for that decision to or that vote to go forward, or that ballot measured. So that's the new information, and from what I'm hearing, there's no new information regarding what we discussed last council meeting.
Well, I disagree with you, Mr. Hari. I think the new information is that we have new members of council on here who are determining a change in policy. Okay, to proceed then with the second motion, the motion would be that the Preservation Committee be provided direction from City Council to develop a list of priorities. If cost estimates are available to them or they are able to determine that through their research, they may include those cost estimates and report back to the City Council after they have completed their next two meetings, which I believe would be the August and September meetings. Those are the scheduled meetings.
There would be a meeting in July unless we can establish a quorum.
Okay, then we would ask them to report back to City Council, I believe September 24th. That would allow them time to complete their July and August meetings?
Yes, because they're the last Wednesday of each month.
All right.
Mayor, may I just suggest that perhaps you just make your motion and say the next two meetings, because if they do not receive a quorum in July, then because we are aware that there may be some individuals that are taking vacation, and so to not run afoul of the council's direction, that we just say the next two meetings that they have.
That's fine. Madam City Clerk, do you need any clarifications on the motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. Okay, we'll now move to item number 13. For possible action, Resolution 6963, a resolution of the City Council of Boulder City approving an agreement between the city and the State Historic Preservation Office for certified local government designation. Mr. Mays, thank you.
Certified Local Government, or CLG, program was created by the National Park Service. The program is jointly administered by the Park Service and State Historic Preservation Offices, or SHPO. Communities that become CLG certified have access to state grant opportunities and state resources to promote and preserve local historic preservation efforts. There are currently only 4 CLG designated communities within the state of Nevada. That includes Reno, Las Vegas, Carson City, and Story County. In order to become CLG certified, a city must enter into an agreement with Nevada SHPO. In your packet is the agreement from SHPO, which outlines the city and SHPO responsibilities. Among the responsibilities of the city is to commit to participate local resources to historic preservation training, for the city to encourage public participation in historic preservation programs, and for the city to utilize the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines for archaeology and historic preservation. Also, the city is required to submit an annual report to SHPO on historic preservation efforts. Achieving the CLG designation accomplishes one of the action steps in the 2025 strategic plan. Specifically, that's Goal D, Promote Historic Preservation, Strategy 3. And I can answer any questions.
Council?
I have no questions.
No questions.
Mr. Harhay?
I have no questions.
Just one clarification that I would like to make in light of the actions that we took on the previous item. Those previous actions should not have any impact on this agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office, as long as the city has a designated person for the SHPO office to contact. Is that correct?
That is correct. The other communities don't necessarily have a historic preservation staff person, but they do have a staff person that is committed to following through and being that primary contact.
Okay, thank you. And with that, then, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The vote's unanimous. Thank you. Item 14 for possible action, discussion and staff directive regarding the economic development plan for the city of Boulder City. Please don't sit down, Mr. Mays.
Your Community Development Director, Michael Mays, again. So the creation of an economic development plan completes an action item from the 2025 strategic plan. I'm starting to repeat myself this evening. Specifically, Goal C, Manage Growth and Development, and Strategy 2. Similar to the city strategic plan, it provides a roadmap for economic development activities for staff and holds the staff accountable, as it will have specific, measurable goals that staff will be reporting back to the city council and the community on our economic development efforts. Staff has been working with the UNLV School of Public Policy and Leadership to develop community outreach process to help identify economic development priorities for the community. Before staff continues working with UNLV to complete the study and develop the action items that would be brought before the council in August or September for consideration, the UNLV team would like council feedback on the pillars and goals that have been identified as part of this outreach process. And they will go into greater detail as part of their presentation and lay those pillars and goals out for you. Before I turn this over to Vincent Navarra so that he can introduce the UNLV team, I just wanted to thank the community for their involvement in this process. Many people contributed their time to the facilitation exercises as well as the online survey. I want to thank the UNLV team for all of their hard work in doing the outreach efforts and in developing the plan. And I want to specifically thank Rafi Fasekjan, our Economic Development Coordinator, for leading this effort. So I will turn it over to Vincent.
Hello, Council. For the record, Vincent Nava. And I just want to go ahead and reiterate what Michael mentioned. I'd like to thank Michael, Rafi for allowing us to be here, the City Council, the Mayor, and also the rest of the Boulder City community for being here today. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that was prepared. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and start off and talk a little bit about us. So let's go ahead and switch it over to the next slide. Oh. Yes, this is helpful. Okay, so this is our team. As Michael mentioned, we're the graduate students from UNLV. Ryan Cunningham, Thomas Jaramillo, myself, Vincent Nava, and Craig Valdez. What we have been doing here at Boulder City is we're trying to go ahead and talk to community members from different groups, from different constituencies. We're talking to the EDAC EDAC committee, Boulder City residents, the Boulder City Council itself, and trying to get input on the economic status of Boulder City. What we did is the process that we've had is that we conducted a SWOT analysis on these 4 groups. The SWOT analysis consisted of talking to them, identifying strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that the Boulder City could develop. Once we took these opportunities, strengths, and weaknesses, we turned it over to priorities, which then turned into pillars, and then eventually into the final solution, which is strategies that we're going to go ahead and take place. For that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ryan.
Also, for the record, my name is Ryan Cunningham. So essentially, Boulder City, wow. Okay. So the median value for owner-occupied homes in Boulder City is larger than that of Nevada, Clark County, and Las Vegas as a whole, and only surpassed by Henderson, which is with its new higher-end developments. And secondly, in terms of land, in terms of office space / retail plots that are available, Boulder City has a lower vacancy rate than Las Vegas. So this, so this points to some measure of health in the retail sector. Next will be Craig Valdez.
For the record, my name is Craig Valdez. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tourism economic data provided by Visa View Travel. This service identified international cardholder information as well as domestic cardholder information. And according to the service, international tourists are 10% of total sales receipts, where at summer peak those were transactions took place and there was a drop in the fall. Between 2017 and 2018, there was a 15% drop in international spending. When you look at domestic cardholders, they spent 1% more in 2018 than they did in 2017. There was a high spending plateau in between March and July, and there was a drop and spike in October. The 3 cities that Boulder City based on cardholder transactions were Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. The Las Vegas Valley holders accounted for 18% of all transactions, but 50% of total domestic spending, while LA had 9% and Phoenix had 4%. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Thomas.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Thomas Jaramillo. So at the next slide, so to prime this community outreach, we basically primed it with an online survey that took place. We had over 100 respondents with this online survey, and they were identifying basically what they were kind of expecting to be the priorities and what they were expecting would be the best way to sustain the local economy of Boulder City. So the 4 things that kept coming up throughout the surveys was recreation and tourism, adding additional businesses that are...
Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. But yeah, adding additional businesses that are relevant to the community, investing in improvement in infrastructure, and then lastly, business retention. And this would be able to basically set the stage for attracting new businesses to Boulder City, as well as raising the quality of life of Boulder City. And then I'm going to pass it over back to Craig.
Yep, so when we began our research, we reached out to 4 different communities. We reached out on April 24th to the community. We did a SWOT analysis at that time where we talked about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then at the very end talked about priorities, which Vincent will go over later on. And then 6 days later, we talked to the EDAC committee, so Boulder City the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And then on May 6th, we spoke to business groups. And then on May 8th, we spoke to the Boulder City City Council. And at this time, I'm going to call on Vincent to talk about what those results were.
Thank you, Craig. So the next slide is very important. This slide. So the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis is very important because it's a culmination and a consolidation of all the input that was given by the 4 groups. So we asked the citizens, the business owners, EDAC, and then the city council itself, and then these are the highlights that came about. Strengths. The strengths of Boulder City at the current present moment, it's a geographical location, proximity to the dam, proximity to a large metropolitan area, to the lake, and to the river. Historic preservation, that we saw as a strength for Boulder City. We also found renewable energy and the use of specifically solar in the city to be effective. Small town identity. So normally, sometimes this is not like the peak of what's considered the strength for the city, but in this case it is. And it was identified by every single group to be a strength for the city. The weaknesses. So the current weaknesses that Boulder City faced is a divergent city goals of perhaps not being on the same vision of the next step taking the city forward. Lack of business diversity in the sense of focusing more on one sector more than another. And intercity business and city relationships was identified as one of the weaknesses. Opportunities. So strengths and weaknesses are the current and the present. As for opportunities and challenges, we're looking at the future. For opportunities, land development. So Boulder City has a lot of land. I think it's one of the largest, if not the largest city in Nevada. And there's a lot of land to develop in various ways as the city chooses. Business diversification. So there's opportunity for the city to diversify its business opportunities. Outdoor and adventure tourism, due to its geographical proximity, the city of Boulder City has a lot that it can do when it comes to its outdoor recreation. Challenges. So foreseeable challenges in the future include lack of business diversity, affordable housing, climate change, such as like dropping levels in Lake Mead, and then divergent city goals of in the future still not having a consolidated city vision. So as we look at this is all the combination of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges, which took us to the recurring priorities. So after we asked these 4 groups, we asked them, based off of this information that you see here before you, what do you think are the Boulder City's priorities moving forward in the future? These were the themes that reoccurred in every single one of the groups, which include historical preservation, outdoor recreation, tourism, solar energy, controlled growth, city business relationships, shared community vision, housing affordability, and city infrastructure. Those were the priorities that we identified forward. These priorities are important because we consolidate these priorities and then it turns into our pillars. And for that, I'll go ahead and give it to Thomas.
Yeah, so based off of the recurring priorities that kept coming up throughout the the 4 meetings that led us to creating our pillars. And the first pillar that I'd like to talk about is economic sustainability. And the idea behind this one is basically to strengthen the Boulder City's relationships with their current solar, the companies that they solar partner with, as well as exploring possibly new opportunities that could be potentially to expand upon solar. And then lastly, to kind of look at Boulder City's unique characteristics that kind of make it the great city that it is, to make it into economic development activities based off of economic sustainability. And then I'd like to pass the next pillar over to Craig Valdez.
Based off of some of the strengths and opportunities that we looked at, and as mentioned by Vincent, small town feel as well as historical preservation and outdoor recreational activities were labeled as the strengths and opportunities for Boulder City. And so we capitalized on that theme to create a pillar around tourism where the 2 items that we wanted to move on were exploring how Boulder City can leverage its historic preservation assets to drive local economic development. And the second theme of that is Boulder City is in a unique position to have recreation assets that support tourism, and we want to develop action items that strengthen and expand these opportunities. And for the last pillar, which I'm going to turn over to Ryan, is business retention.
So as part of business retention, this pillar has two parts to it. The first one, the first, and this was addressed in numerous focus groups, was that there are some issues of communication between the business sector and City Hall, and these creates roadblock, and these create some roadblocks to to the smoothest of functioning. So this is one that needs to be dealt with. There needs to be a greater level of bureaucratic cooperation and a streamlining of the procedures that link the two. And second, my last two and the last 2 bullet points here can be summarized in terms of modernization. The first is the workforce. Boulder City is primed, especially with the vast amount of land it has to expand into a lot of new industries. This is especially with energy and with energy such as solar. But in order to fully utilize this opportunity, the workforce needs to be developed and brought forward and taught where they can be of the greatest use and practicality in pursuing these ends. And second, modernization is the infrastructure. Whereas having the people to perform the task is crucial. Equally crucial is having the infrastructure to make the venture successful. As part of the business meeting, one of the things that I pulled from it was a business member said that that they felt the pinch for utilities more than the citizens group. So what this comes to mind is if you could, especially with the increased use of solar, if you can increase, if you can modernize infrastructure, you can increase the efficiency of its delivery, and with delivery, hopefully will come lower costs, and then with these lower costs means you have increased cash and other assets that can go forward and be utilized in more productive ways, such as say expanding your business or hiring new employees. So with these 3 points, business retention in Boulder City can very much improve. Now kicks back to.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So now everybody's probably wondering, what are the next steps? So let's go ahead and highlight the next steps. So currently right now in the month of July, we're here presenting at the City Council. Again, thank you for that. And we're gonna go ahead and get input from the City Council and from the different groups that we still have pending. In August, we should be able to go ahead and consolidate a draft, the final draft and the final presentation that we're going to go ahead and deliver all of our findings. And then in September, hopefully hand it over to Michael for implementation of some of the findings that we had so far. Overall, we just want to go ahead and thank you. It was a great collaboration working with the city, the Boulder City, and then we're really optimistic of the findings and the implementation of them, because something we did notice is that the citizens of Boulder City are very involved, and so is our city council, so we're very hopeful of good changes taking place. So thank you, and go ahead and open up for questions.
Well, I first want to thank the efforts of all of you in doing this. I hope you're getting some type of extra credit for it. I know you've certainly put in an awful lot of effort into this, and I really do appreciate that. I think both our business community and the other council members are also very appreciative, city staff. Again, you've put an awful lot of effort into it. I'll go ahead and open this up to other council members for questions or comments.
By the way, I'm a retired university professor, and I wanted to let you know that you all got an A.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And I used to teach SWOT analysis, so you're spot on. I wanted to ask you again the question that I asked when I was part of the audience and participating in that. And that is, how do you handle the I hate to use crashing into each other of conflicting objectives? We have a very strong controlled growth ordinance that says we don't want physical development out there. You know, we have certain areas that are restricted for recreation and conservation and energy, and we can put in our solar fields. And yet you talked about, development. You talk about training, that it's an infrastructure. And, you know, from your own personal thoughts, because I know this issue came up before, how would you intend to deal with that? But where do you suggest we go in terms of, say, developing infrastructure that supports local business growth and training, if we're not going to, and we're not going to build training centers out in the desert? So how would you propose for that particular item, for example? Any of you, in terms of that?
Okay. Yeah, so let them jump in if they have any input on that. But great question, by the way. And thank you. I want to say that our Professor Dr. Ward is in the audience here tonight somewhere, so hopefully she heard that. But that being said, the final report should have a little bit more of the findings, especially in the recommendations based off of that as well. We're still finalizing everything and the final recommendations that we will have. One thing to keep in mind is that we're coming here as a third party, so objective third party coming from UNLV. None of us have lived here before or worked here at that. So we want to go ahead and provide that third party perspective of this is what we think, and then it'll be up to the city if they want to adopt it or not. As for your question specifically, what was it again? If you want to go ahead and provide.
Okay, how would you propose to deal with issues like growing the infrastructure that supports local business growth and workforce development without having to physically develop in the desert? Okay, by keeping the footprint of the city relatively the same and yet conducting those kinds of activities.
Good question. I mean, yeah, I think Thomas has better input on that.
I think.
So as far as that question goes, I guess when we were creating these, we were looking for common themes that were coming through. It wasn't like one group was outweighing the other. Basically, the idea was common agreement that we were basically going through. So in regards to basically, like as far as solar would go, that would be looking at areas that are designated still that can be developed on, possibly for that one, as well as basically going off of so yeah, once you would expand that way, then you would look and then sorry, I got fumbled on my words.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
But also with, I guess I would say with existing infrastructure, instead of expanding infrastructure, just kind of repairing existing infrastructure, as that was a concern that a lot of businesses had brought up, that it's just, some of it's just getting a little out of date. And then possibly for training, maybe utilizing the training centers that do exist over the hill in Henderson and Las Vegas, kind of building a rapport like how like with UNLV and Nevada State College, to kind of build that relationship with those areas so that you can train people from Boulder City, and then that they would want to, they can learn and then come back and bring those skills to Boulder City.
Okay, good answer.
I'm going to add something to that. Something I also wanted to add, and I think we didn't include in our report, but we have it in the actual written report, is that economic development is not necessarily defined as physical growth. It's also strengthening the economic system within the existing framework. And so that's what we're looking to do. And so as we progress forward, we're looking at action items to support these goals.
Thank you.
I also wanted to thank you guys. I thought that was really great. It's good seeing some more young blood in these halls for sure. So one of the things that kept coming up here is lack of business diversity. Obviously, it's kind of a complaint I hear not only from the local residents, but other businesses as well. You know, they also want to see other more diverse things, because that kind of helps, you know, fill out the whole thing. So I guess as far as direction goes, because I'm not exactly sure what we're exactly looking for, but trying to identify ways to increase business diversity that also fit into Boulder City's plan as a small community.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that question.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to that, something to think about is also kind of like Craig was talking about, like reinforcing what is currently valued at Boulder City. One of the things was adventure tourism and outdoor recreation as well too. So one of the findings that we found is through the Buxton leakage report is that there was a lot of retail or like antique stores here in the valley, that there was like a surplus on average as opposed to like the rest of any other similar sized town that we have. So one recommendation that we have is just basically strengthening that area of outdoor recreational tourism. Perhaps you can strengthen it through the marketing as well too of Boulder City. So solidifying, if everybody's on board of solidifying that Boulder City can thrive off of that, so, having like a bigger stance in the marketing aspect. So you know how Las Vegas had like, you know, what happens there stays there. It was like that marketing front. Perhaps Boulder City could go ahead and create a marketing front for adventure tourism, as that is something I feel like everybody's on board and something that already has there in place. That is just one option, but then you have to just look at the different areas that Boulder City has strengths in. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else too.
Also, because my family, you know, we like to go to California a lot, and then if you're coming in, there says into Las Vegas, there's advertising for the as near as Barstow, there's advertising for the M Resort. So why not make an effort to talk about, it's like that far out, the dam, and all the numerous outdoor recreations that make up this great city, and all the things that make it unique and make it a place to go to, other than just an internal advertising. Make it something where you spend out to even another state, because Lake Mead and the surrounding areas do have a strong allure to them that many would find pleasurable, enjoyable. Boulder City essentially has been a well-kept secret within Nevada, and maybe letting people from outside the state know. It might raise its viewership to somewhere to that of like a Tahoe or something else.
I also had another question regarding communication issues between businesses and the city. That's another thing that I hear often from other business owners that some have said, oh, things are getting better. Others have said, new faces, but it's a lot of the same for us. But it is something that I have heard throughout the years that there are communication issues. So definitely maybe targeting some of those things coming up would be something really good to look at coming up. And certainly advertisement. I think that is certainly an area. Advertisement marketing is definitely areas where we could certainly improve on. Yes.
There's also one other thing, is that especially like in downtown Phoenix, which has a similar kind of feel, old Phoenix this, is that they have a consolidated email list. For example, like if you stay at a hotel in Old Phoenix or Sea Museum or anything, it's like they make an effort to build an email list that spans a vast gulf of activities in the city. So essentially, if Boulder City could go down that line, where now then say essentially you have an art in the park or a film festival, instead of just not instead of relying upon a locally sourced newspaper, you could send that out to your email list, where it's like where you can reach people in North Vegas, Henderson, and in many cases you might reach someone from out of state who is visiting and had filtered through here and they like to fill Boulder City, and they're looking for a reason to go there again. So with that, you can also expand a digital footprint.
Let me go ahead and add to that. So some of the input that we received when we talked to the groups is, the city business relationship was bad. The majority of the feedback that we got back ever since the creation of Rafi's position, they mentioned that it has gotten a little bit better since they have like a point person they can contact and then go to person. One suggestion that we have is simplicity. So the thing is like simplifying the communication and for the citizens as well too, because sometimes you have like residents that come here that they have like idea how it is, how to start a business here and what is needed, but at the same time, like once it started, then they bump into these roadblocks of like, you have to do this first and that first, the ordinances, the notifications. So if there's like a simple outline of how they can start a business or how they can communicate with the city, and it's also usability too. So one thing you notice is like the Boulder City's website, nothing wrong with it, but it could be a little bit more more simple and more easier to find things and locate information. So that's my suggestion of improving the communication. It's in a process too. It takes some time as well too. So if you want to improve communication lines, you have to have simplicity and accessibility for that. But great question though.
Yeah. Just for clarification for what we're doing here tonight, we're just kind of having an open discussion on what we're looking for? Are we taking action on anything, or just looking for a little bit of clarification on that?
What we're looking for is feedback on the specific pillars and goals that the UNLV team have identified. Because with that guidance, then they're going to go back and continue to work on the plan and work with staff to identify action items that follow through with the pillars and goals. And similar to the strategic plan, we bring that all back to you in August or September for you to evaluate and to adopt the plan.
Thank you.
Councilman Harhay, did you have any questions or comments?
Well, the comment I have is I think it's great that we're drawing upon some of the great resources here locally, UNLV to be particular in this case, to bolster our move forward, especially with the economic development plan, which I view as being a crucial element for the future of Boulder City.
Thank you. I did have a couple of questions. One, I was at the first meeting that you had conducted, and I recall, there was a process of people putting things on Post-it notes, and those went up. And several people had written down controlled growth or the growth ordinance. And you, not being all that familiar with Boulder City, your team was not all that familiar with what that meant. It pretty well defines a lot of stuff here in Boulder City over the last 40 years. The reason I bring that up is one of the opportunities that you have on your SWOT summary is the land development. We get it. We've got over 200 square miles. A lot of that's devoted to conservation area. We've understood that for a long time, but there's a difference when you come into Boulder City and when you look at the valley. Boulder City made a decision a long time ago that's been reinforced by multiple initiatives, ballot questions, votes of the people, that we wanted to maintain controlled growth here. We certainly have development going on out in El Dorado Valley with the solar energy projects. I'm glad that you have included in that there are similar functions within that. One of those, you didn't identify it specifically, but they're talking about energy storage. They prefer not to use the term battery storage anymore because they have things other than batteries where they can store energy. That's a possibility for some of the land that's not as conducive to constructing solar panels on. And I think that as a city, we sometimes forget that we have thousands of acres of land already producing solar energy out there. I'm not sure how it compares to other areas in Nevada, but at least for the time being, I suspect that we are the largest solar energy production in Nevada by some amount. Now, I know NV Energy has plans to do some projects in the near future, but we also have at least 2 projects that are likely to be going forward here in the near future. And the reason I bring that up, and you do mention it in your analysis here, these are growth projects, and they bring in millions of dollars of revenue directly to city government. That brings me to my next point is where do we see the distinction between what the responsibilities of city government are and what the responsibilities of the business community are? When you talk about advertising, for instance, I believe the other gentleman had mentioned billboards that advertise some of the resorts in Las Vegas. Our businesses are free to compete for that same advertising space. The problem they have is they don't have the revenue that the M or some of the other resorts have to be able to purchase that type of advertising. So when we talk about, well, we should do that. We should have things out there as people approach either from the LA area or the Phoenix area, wherever they're coming from, to let them know about all the great things we have here in Boulder City. That would be great, but we always have to keep in mind that we're competing against the actual entertainment capital of the world, and it's right next door to us. And sometimes they're just going to blow our socks off. That's a part of what we live with here in Boulder City is we happen to live next door to Las Vegas. And that's a great thing in many ways, but it's also a tough partner for 16,000 people to compete against. A couple of other things. Some of the financial information that you had in your analysis, it's difficult. We've only seen the I-11 bypass open for a certain period of time, but we are approaching about 1 year. And I'm not sure exactly when your numbers were taken, but you had some numbers in there from 2017 to 2018. There was actually an uptick of 1%. Do you know exactly when that time period is? I'm trying to get at how it fits in with the opening of the I-11.
Mayor, let me take that one. So what that would be reflective of is the entire calendar year comparison of 2017 and 2018. The city has contracted with Visa View to continue to collect data. By the end of 2019, we will be able to compare quarter-to-quarter impacts of what occurred before and after the opening by 11. So that's still a work in progress.
Okay, so essentially a 1% in a period of time that did not include the bypass we don't have enough data at this time. That would be the answer. That
It would have included the last quarter of 2018 after I-11 had opened, but only one quarter.
Okay, thank you. So we're still early on that. Go ahead. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and address the first statement that you made. That's a great point that you have, by the way. You're right. I mean, you can't compete against in the same field with Las Vegas when it comes to like attracting tourism, hotels, for all that. But when it comes to smaller towns, the trick is specialization. In the sense of like having fields you can go ahead and specialize and thrive upon. So Las Vegas is known for gaming and everything like that, but then there's a growing trend of people that fly into Las Vegas. They don't fly in to stay in Las Vegas, but they fly in to go throughout their adventures nearby, such as the Grand Canyon, Zion, Death Valley, and then Hoover Dam and Lake Mead as well too. So I think something like specializations already has started already when it comes to the solar panels you've used in your land. So that's an example of specialization that you guys have that land. And then you guys have the advantage, and you guys bring in a great amount of revenue, and you're still staying true to your values of not expanding or developing those the actual city itself. And then also something to think about too when it comes to like land development is we meant that as well too. Like land development doesn't necessarily mean like expand your city and where you live and the businesses, but also like continuing to expand on the solar battery panel. And something to keep in mind about solar and batteries.
Remember, we don't use the word battery anymore.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Storage. Sorry, storage.
Energy storage.
Energy storage. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. But something to think about too when it comes to energy storage and solar is you have to always make sure that whoever you're contracting to use in that land, they're up to date in the sense that it's the most advanced technology that is out there too, because you also have to remain that land to be competitive in the sense if you have someone else that has more effective solar panels and they can provide more revenue or more profit for your city, something else to consider as well too. So always make sure you're up to date on the land usage that you have. And that goes along with the land with the concept of development, land development, and redevelopment as well too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
A couple of other statistics that you had noted in there. I believe the figure was only 4% of the revenues were identified coming from the Phoenix area.
Yeah, I think that's the Visa view, and I think Craig's gonna talk about that.
Yeah, that was a travel snapshot from VisaView. So when they pulled information from domestic cardholders, the top 3 cities that visit Boulder City based on their cardholder transactions domestically were Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. And so according to the service, they reported that Phoenix had 4% of total domestic spending.
And Las Vegas was at 50%?
That's right, yes.
And what I'm getting at by looking at those numbers is, when we look at the impact of the bypass, and again, I realize we're not quite a year into that yet, but Phoenix seems to be the area that would be most impacted by the bypass. People from the Los Angeles area and certainly people from the Las Vegas area are not utilizing the bypass in order to come here to Boulder City. Some of the people from Las Vegas, if they're going to the dam, yes, they could bypass Boulder City using that I-11. But what I'm getting at is if we're looking at the bypass as being a major economic hit on at least our tourism community, it seems that the community that is most likely to use that pathway accounts for the smallest percentage of the other 3 cities that you have information for. Mm-hmm. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. I still get back to this, I understand, and it's been brought out by Councilman Adams about what the city can do with regard to these things. Can we streamline the business license process or to get building permits, things like that. But then we seem to talk a lot about things like advertising and accumulating email lists and that sort of thing. When you talk about that, is that something that you're looking to us to get direction from as far as activities of the city government to conduct?
No, not particularly. The pillars and goals that we're presenting with you tonight are not set in stone, they're fluid. And so we're really looking, the action items that we're going to be presenting later on, or the ones that we will be developing later on, are going to be more specific. The things that we've talked about tonight have sounded a lot more specific than we originally planned to talk about. But we will be working with city staff to make sure that those action items are specific. But in the meantime, we're looking for your guidance in terms of do the pillars and the goals match up, and are they succinct and sound? And if so, then we'll move on from action items from there. And so earlier in the discussion, Councilman Adams talked about business diversity. And so I wanted to ask at that point, is there something that we should include in our goals to address business diversity? And so taking a look at what we've provided, what your feedback is in terms of how the language is, and should we take something out, should we modify something, and then moving on from there to develop specific action items.
Well, and I appreciate that. What I'm getting at is many of these things seem to be something that's business responsibility, something that's city responsibility, and something where there can be partnerships. So there seems to be a blend of responsibilities within these suggestions. And I'm just trying to get at, when we talk about things like, how do businesses improve their advertising or their reach or things like that, is that something that's viewed as the city working on?
I believe so. We're working with city staff to develop these action items, and so I believe it'll be an initiative taken upon by the city to do. Obviously one of those goals is to streamline cooperation with the business sector, and so at some point in time, specific actions may require businesses to work with the city on this. But at this time, based on the nature of our project, I believe it is city focused.
Okay, well, then that causes a concern for me that, what is it that the taxpayers of Boulder City are responsible for as far as delivering these types of activities on behalf of businesses? That's where I see a little bit of an issue with where's the line between what taxpayers owe and the responsibility of business owners to run successful businesses.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, Mayor. No, it is an excellent question, though. So this is where we're at. So right now we're at the stage of the pillars, and we're trying to find the focus of that. So we haven't started the implementation of the strategic goals, and then basically assigning the responsibilities of who's going to do what. You do bring up a good point that some of these might fall under businesses, some of these may fall under cities. I would have to go ahead and retract what Craig said about solely being a city responsibility, because I do not believe that is. We do not believe that is the case. It's going to be a mix. We're basing, a lot of these findings we're basing off is previous reports that have conducted by similar sized cities in the past. And then at the end, those reports outline the responsibility, if it's the business, if it's the city, if it's a shared partnership, if it's part of the citizens' responsibility. So we haven't gotten to that point yet of outlining our recommendations for that. We're going to go ahead and provide the recommendations of who does what based off of the pillars, which then evolve into the strategic strategies. And then once you go ahead and provide that report, it'll be up to the city and up to the businesses what they decide to accept or reject those recommendations. And it's just basically taking pieces of that and see what works best for the city. But we retract. It's not the city's responsibility. Most likely it's going to be a lot of shared partnerships in order to get this done, because as we can know, that's how we get stuff done.
Thank you for that clarification. I guess the last point that I would make, and something that I have not seen throughout your presentation, we have an airport here in Boulder City that more than 200,000 passengers a year go through, taking tours of Hoover Dam, Grand Canyon. And I've always thought that, there's 200,000 people who came here for the reasons Boulder City actually exists, and how to get some synergies out of that to help our other businesses. I would like to see something like that become part of this as well. There's an awful lot of emphasis on outdoor recreation, that sort of thing. I've never seen counts on how many people come here using our bike trails, our hiking trails, that sort of thing. But the number I have seen is we have an awful lot of people that go through that airport who take a shuttle bus here, enjoy their tour, and then take a shuttle bus back to Las Vegas.
And thank you, Mayor. That's exactly why we're here, in order to get the input and the feedback, because based on the the focus groups that we questioned, and the independent research we've done on our own, there honestly has not been much or any mention of the airport that we found thus far.
And that might be part of the problem.
Correct, yeah. And then, that's why we're here, to present and provide the feedback, and then we'll definitely make note of that, and you'll definitely see them in the final report that we provide.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
No, I don't have any.
Well, again, excellent job. I know you all have put a lot of effort into this. Professor, I hope you credit them well for what they've done. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
You guys don't want to stick around? No.
Take a small break.
All right, we'll move then to item 15 for possible action, discussion, and possible staff directive regarding the use of discussion groups or workshops for members of City Council to discuss various topics. Again, this is an item that I had requested. I don't know, Mr. City Manager, did you want to have anyone from staff make comments first?
No, at this time, Mayor, I think it's appropriate if you go ahead and introduce the item and put forth your concerns.
Thank you. The reason I have requested this is, first off, we have new members of City Council. Later tonight, we will be trying to establish a third new member. I've been on council 2 years, the same as Councilman Harhay has. I can tell you that there's an awful lot of information that comes at us very quickly on a variety of subjects. It's difficult for us to be able to interpret, learn, make wise choices in every case. The reason I've suggested this is the possibility for City Council members to meet on items that they feel they need more information or that they simply want to get input from others. A concern that we always have here in the state of Nevada is our open meeting law. That's intended to prevent decisions from being made outside the public eye. Certainly that's occurred here in Boulder City in the past. That's not a good thing, and that's certainly not my intent. Within the information that I had included in the packet is to stress that whatever is done would follow the open meeting law, would be agendized as we do our regular council meetings, would also include opportunities for the public to have input, and would be based on topics that are going to change depending on what is coming before council. As it is right now, the restrictions that we have, that the open meeting law has wisely placed on public officials, it makes it very difficult for us to say, you know, I don't understand this, or I would like more information about this before having to decide things on that issue. During meetings of this type, it would be important for all council members to understand we could not deliberate towards a decision. We could discuss different things about topics, but we could not say, oh, well, then we're going to do, no, that would be a violation of the open meeting law unless there was something that had been specifically included in the agenda. I just feel that there is too much information for us to deal with within a 5-day period of time between when these packets come out and when we have our council meetings. Tonight's packet is 230 pages. That's a light one. We've had these that have exceeded 1,000 pages. And to be able to digest all of that information and understand it all in a clear manner, that's difficult. When Mr. Noyle arrived here as the city manager, one of the things he did was to establish briefings, which we had already always had, but ones that included each department head who had something on the agenda, rather than him having to be the expert on everything, which is certainly not fair to him, is to bring those people in that are most directly involved in those. I have found that very helpful. When we get all of our department heads in there that have an issue on there, they're able to answer a lot of questions that I've not been able to determine out of the packet myself. So I believe this is good. I know that city staff has expressed some doubts or some reservations about how this comports with the open meeting law. My reading of it says that we can do this, we can do it in a public way, and we can all become better informed because of it. But I'll go ahead and open it up to comments or questions from other members of the council.
Well, first, if I may speak, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
First, I must congratulate you on this movement, because what this does, in effect, is answer some of the shortcomings that may have been experienced in the town hall meetings that we've had in the past, in which I encouraged. And I know that myself, I could speak for myself, that I found the open meeting law to be a daunting impediment to informed decision making. And the fact that under the present interpretation of it, without something like this workshop, as a city council person, you're restricted to talk to one other council person regarding an issue on the agenda. And that is sorely deficient in my mind in order to get the full value out of the other councilman's viewpoints and skill sets. So I would again congratulate you on this motion, and I hope that staff, and I know it probably will be a daunting thing to clearly separate policy making, which is the big negative in terms of this type of initiative, from free and open discussions. I think nothing but good could happen from this if it's implemented correctly. And again, I congratulate you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I feel like I would need to know what that looks like. You know, what the criteria would be, what we could talk about, what we can't. I'm relatively new to all of the open meeting law instructions. I know we have a training coming up tomorrow, meeting with PullPack and a lot on ethics. And I know for myself, I'm just learning what this is beginning to look like in terms of two council meetings. I think and I understand we could do a town hall, that's two people could have that discussion, that the other council people could be there but can't participate in the discussion. How 5 of us can be up here having a discussion on something that does not look like deliberation, I would need to know what that looks like. I think it's a great idea. I know it's great that I can talk to any one of the staff about these issues, that the briefings are incredibly helpful, where I can go to answer questions. And I know that we have open comment section before, we have public comment before on any issues, but not really responding to any of that. Again, I would love to know more. I would love to be able to hear other sides outside of the restrictions, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what those rules would require. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there certainly could be a lot of benefit to this. You know, I am just one person, and you know, everybody up here on council has different strengths. You know, and we all have different weaknesses. I'm certainly not the perfect person. I don't know everything, but of course, the open meeting law does limit some of our ability to, you know, to communicate outside of the public eye, and there's good reason for that. It's you know, you don't want your council members or other elected officials, you know, essentially making decisions behind closed doors. You know, you want to know how those decisions are coming to be made so that you can make an informed decision about what comments to make on it, what concerns you have to share with us, things like that. So I certainly see the benefit. There is a lot to garner from all of this that's going on right now. The briefings are incredibly helpful. I've been having a number of meetings with all of the different department heads to get a better understanding. But really, I see this as more of a benefit for the council members to discuss, also kind of lean into some of the strengths that we also have, so we can get a better grasp on, not just from staff, but also who they've, you know, people that they've been talking to, because I can't even go and have a conversation with somebody and then have that person go and talk to another council member and tell them what I've said. You know, things like that become, you know, they become violations of the open meeting law. I do have some concerns with a meeting every other week in perpetuity. I'm not sure if this is something that we need to do forever, or if there is more specific topics that, as they come up, you know, we have, you know, these meetings that can be scheduled. That, you know, hey, every odd, you know, first and third Tuesdays or whatever if we were to do this, you know. But we don't necessarily have to fill it out each time. It would be as needed. I think would be better. You know, I do still work. It's not a normal day job as most people, but I do still am still very busy. So I do have some concerns as far as time commitment goes to it. But I certainly see a huge benefit to not only the council but also to the public as well, to be there, to be present, to hear more from council.
To answer a couple of those, Councilwoman Bridges had said, what would it look like? I don't know yet. That's going to be something that I think has to be worked out by reviewing the open meeting law, getting input from others. I do know that there are other public bodies, including other councils, that do meet to discuss specific issues. Certainly this council does that, and with regard to our budget. We've done it on other issues like the strategic plan. So these types of meetings are not unknown, but as Councilman Adams also said, we may find, you know what, we're all brilliant now and we no longer need these, or maybe we can skip a few of them, or whatever it is. I don't find this being of a nature that is restrictive on any council members. I look at this as being something that's an opportunity to participate in a wider discussion of some of the items that come before this city. We may not have an issue that would be pending before the city council. It may just be an issue that we hear from the citizens that say, hey, this is of concern to me. I would like to get some more information on that. We may be in that situation. So at this time, and again, based on what this is the staff directive regarding the possibility of these. I know that staff has expressed to me reservations about us doing this. I would like to get more specifics on exactly what it is in the open meeting law that they have concerns about. So I would go ahead and make a motion to direct staff to obtain and provide as much information regarding the open meeting law, specifications and restrictions on the type of issues that council can discuss.
I would second that motion.
Well, then I guess I'm done making the motion.
Shouldn't pause.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to add, one thing when I was thinking about this in my head in areas where it could be helpful. I thought back to the appointment of the Utilities Committee, and I'm obviously would want to know if there would be any issue with that, but it would have been very helpful perhaps had the council been able to get together and been able to at least discuss how maybe not any decision makings, but getting a better understanding of what the process might actually look like, because what ended up happening, it was kind of a mess, not everything's perfect up here, but things like that, just to get better understandings of the process to kind of help streamline these council meetings, because it's already 9:30 right now. These meetings can go on long. We have important things to discuss. We do want to be able to streamline those as much as possible. So there are areas where I think that can actually help these meetings be a little bit more timely, so that it also encourages people to participate, because they don't have to sit here and listen to me blabber on about these things. But I just wanted to make that point. So
I just want to make a comment about how a very innocuous action can be construed as a open meeting law violation. In the first week as a councilman, I received some information which I thought would be very helpful to the other council people. And so I sent a reply all and was told very promptly that was a serial communication and it would be in violation of the open meeting law. So that's how even the most innocuous thing can turn itself on its head. So I can understand why the staff is reticent to come up with a position, but I think it would be very much worthwhile, mainly because of the fact it would allow the citizens to have a good peek as to how their government works, as well as having councilmen being able to explain issues that are facing the council without reaching a policy decision.
Okay, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous decision then.
I guess I'm really unclear what you're looking for, because we know what type of issues you can discuss. You can discuss whatever you want as long as it's under your, it's city related. It's something that's going to appear before the council. I don't know how do you want this information? I'm not sure what you're asking for.
Well, you had indicated to me over the past week at a couple of different times that you have concerns that the open meeting law would prevent some, all, a portion of, would be in conflict with this concept.
No, my concerns were not your ideas, because I said I don't know what it looks like either. My concerns were what they are with every meeting. They cannot be generic topics. Those were my types of concerns. So as far as this goes, I mean, we know what kind of items can appear. You can put anything on the agenda. What I'm concerned with, just based on the memo we received, is that it's not a free-for-all. It's a very structured meeting. The agenda topics are clear and concise and detailed. They have to be very specific, and you have to stay within the scope of that agenda title. So just nothing outside of the scope of what our concerns are in any type of public meeting. My concern isn't with the open meeting law per se, as long as everything's agendized properly. My concern was the process with council bringing items forward and coming straight to a meeting without staff knowing what that's going to look like, receiving it on the day it's due, and not having the people that are experts in that field the opportunity to research and provide information to the council and help you come to your decisions and move forward with an agenda item on a regular meeting. My concern isn't the open meeting law. My concern is how this is going to look and the process itself, because we want to, as staff, we want to be able to offer as much support to the council as possible and allow the experts in the field the ability to have input, because there might be a law, there might be an ordinance, there might be a statute, history that's involved that would be beneficial to the council. Those were my concerns.
Well, that's different than my recollection, that there were concerns you had regarding the open meeting law preventing these types of discussions. Well, it's my recollection. The other issue regarding staff time, that's understandable, and it's going to be incumbent on each council member to understand that they can't drop the same thing that we get every 2 weeks of a request for an enormous amount of effort to do research and say, we want this ready in 5 days. That's not going to work, and the answer from staff should be, I'm sorry, we can't do it in the period of time you've requested. That's a simple answer. That doesn't stop this process, though.
So, Honorable Mayor and Council, the council has given us direction, and we will go forth and try to come up with a plan on how we would meet your policy objectives as you pass them. Another opportunity that we also have is tomorrow. There is training for city staff and all of the elected and appointed officials. And so long as you're not deliberating or voting, it is a training. You can ask questions about open meeting laws and the like in that particular forum. And we happen to have the premier expert in the state of Nevada that will be providing that training. And that would actually be a good opportunity to ask those kinds of questions so that there is better understanding and we all hear kind of the same thing. So I would certainly encourage the council to utilize that training on open meeting law, ethics, and the likes, and ask your questions appropriately. Again, I would caution that you want to make sure that you're not deliberating or making a decision in your training that we all will be going to tomorrow.
I'm sure Mr. Carlson will be happy to correct us if we should attempt that.
I suspect so.
All right, thank you. We will then move to item number 16 for possible action, appointment to City Council to fill an unexpired term ending in June 2021. My understanding of this process is that each council member may nominate one or more people for the vacancy. A second of the nominations is not needed. Once all of the nominations have been made, the council will then take a vote on those names until we come up with, I believe it's a simple majority, is that correct? So 3 votes.
It doesn't have to be 3 in favor. It would just be whoever receives the most votes, just as we do for committee and commissions. Now, with the passage of a resolution or something, it would require a majority. But for nominations and voting for a person, whoever receives the most votes.
Thank you. With that, then, I will open nominations, and I will nominate Tracy Folda for the position. Any other nominations from the council?
Yes, I'd like to make a nomination. First off, I've been approached by former city councilman, a former mayor, as well as some other prominent people in the community to put forth Peggy Lovett's name. Now, I can understand some trepidation among people regarding that possible nomination, but I think Peggy's input into the life of the city and the governance of the city should be recognized. And the purpose of this little speech is to recognize her outstanding contribution, not only here in the city council, but also at the LCA every other position that she's held on a county-wide basis, including a workforce connection. Her reputation precedes her, and I just want to make that calling out. Now, in terms of an actual nomination, I'd like to place in the nomination a person who has put their name forward and has been tested by the electorate, has put their money forward and has been, in other words, has some skin in the game. They have not been successful up until this point for reconsideration. And so I would like to put into the nomination Judith DeShane for the 5th council person.
Are there any other nominations?
I just wanted to say that this was extremely difficult. And as much as I do understand open meeting law for now, it's so hard to do this and have no idea what other people are thinking. I have received emails and text messages, Facebook Messenger messages, recommendations of who somebody else thinks that somebody else should be. This was one of the hardest decisions there's lots of hard decisions I've had to make, but I didn't make this decision lightly. I really didn't. And I too would nominate Tracy Folda, and I don't want to go into all the reasons, but it was a very well thought out decision that I had to make. So I just wanted to share that this was not an easy decision, especially making it in isolation. So.
Any other nominations?
I was also going to nominate Judy DeShane, just to be open about how I came to that. I was reached out by a lot of people. It was incredibly difficult. I didn't discuss this with any other council member. I had a number of people reach out to me. I reached back out to them and set up time to talk with each of them to really get an understanding of where they were coming from. There were a lot of things to weigh. Even leaving the house, I was, my mind was this way and that way. But that's the weight of responsibility of the city council. I also reached out to a number of people in the community that weren't interested in the seat, but just to get an idea of what they thought was best for the community. People that I know didn't really have necessarily a skin in the game other than being a concerned community member, but doesn't really pay attention to the ins and outs necessarily of politics, but just concerned generally with Boulder City. I will disclose that Glenn Fayen, Judy's husband, did contribute to my campaign early on, so I just wanted to be open about that. There was no quid pro quo or no strings attached to it, but I did want to make that very clear, just so that people were aware.
Any other nominations? A motion to close nominations? I'll move to close nominations. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
That's unanimous to close nominations. We will then vote on the 2 nominations. Let's do it by show of hands. Those for Tracy Folda. Mr. Harhay, please hold your hand up or not.
My hand is secured to the bed here.
Okay, all those in favor of Judith DeShane, either raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2-2. Is there anyone who wishes to reconsider their vote? Okay, hearing none, we then move to the resolution of this, which I believe is to draw a lot.
Where do I get my lot?
I'll draw the lot, thank you.
Do we have to get the allotment committee?
No, we choose them by lot.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, that's right.
No, we don't have the tiny little vase to draw from.
I've got some used bandages if anybody.
Thank you for offering.
I just want to say that, however the name goes, I think both people are very qualified candidates. This has nothing to do with anybody deserving the position or anything like that. This has been very difficult, and there's so much to consider, but I think that regardless, we'll have a very good person on council, and we can start moving forward.
My lot would be unchanged from my nomination.
I believe at this point there's some violin music playing in the background.
It's a drum roll.
You're the musician. You can.
We can't keep a drummer. They always get better gigs. Can we see the names?
I don't want to look.
Oops, there you go.
Tracy Folda is the name drawn. Madam City Clerk, is there any further action that we need?
No, she'll be sworn in at the next meeting. Or sworn in at the next meeting.
All right. Ms. Folda,
Comment. I have a comment. I'd like to welcome-
before you do, Mr. Harre, I would just like to say to Ms. Folda, she's in the audience, congratulations. I think you'll do a fine job. I've also known Ms. Duchesne for a long time. She would have also done a fine job. I hope she will continue to serve on our charter committee. I think that's an important function. And again, I think either candidate would have been an excellent addition to this council. Mr. Harhe, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, first, excuse my telephone manners. It's a little bit difficult to manage this thing. But I just wanted to welcome Tracy Folda to our new council, to our brand new council, and look forward to working with her and our other new elected officials and setting for the best governance that Boulder City has ever seen.
Congratulations,
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on to our next item? All right, we'll move on to item number 17 then for possible action, city council appointments. At our last meeting on June 25th, we did have an opportunity for each of the council members to voice their preference, I guess would be the best way to put it. I've gone over those preferences, looking at the list. So I'm going to ask for a little indulgence from the council here. I do have some familiarity with most of these bodies. And taking into consideration the preferences that people have expressed. For Councilman Harhe, the Southern Nevada Health District Advisory Board member, the Audit Review Committee. For Councilwoman Bridges, the Nevada Pool Pact, the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, as well as the Clark County Debt Management Commission, and Madam City Clerk has informed me that that is by statute. Whoever from Boulder City serves on one must serve on both of those. And also the Southern Nevada Water Authority. For Councilman Adams, the Boulder City Community Education Advisory Board, the Southern Nevada Health District Board, the Nevada League of Cities Board of Directors. And for the new person who has not been able to express any preference, the Nevada League of Cities Legislative Committee and alternate to board, Workforce Connections, and the Audit Review Committee. And then for myself, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the Regional Transportation Commission, and Regional Flood Control District. And I believe this is the same situation where whichever person serves on one must serve on both. And then there are two, I won't say ceremonial, but there are two others that are primarily the mayors that serve on, which are the Civilian Military Council and the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. So with that, unless we have anyone wishing to arm wrestle or otherwise object, please object, Mr. Harhay.
This will probably be my last opportunity tonight. I would very much like to be considered for Workforce Connections. I developed some very good relationships there in dealing with other local elected officials in the Southern Nevada and also in two of the counties. And I very much would enjoy the reappointment to the Workforce Connections council as opposed to, I don't know who was assigned that, but I think I'm pretty much attuned to what the policy issues are, and I think I could do a good job for Boulder City as well as Southern Nevada.
And you believe you would be able to participate in that over the next year?
Yes, I've already talked with Jaime Cruz, who's the executive director of Workforce Connections, and he's looking forward to me staying on board.
Ms. Folda, even though you had not expressed any desire for that job, I'm assuming you'd have no objection then. Fine. We will say Mr. Harhay for Workforce Connections. Any other objections, or can we move on?
I had one clarification, because perhaps I misheard, but I thought you had suggested Councilman Harhay for the Health District Board, but then you had also mentioned my name. Did I?
There are two separate positions there, is my understanding. There's an advisory board member, and then there is a member of the board. I believe it's two separate positions.
It is.
I'm just not seeing it on here.
So that would mean that Mr. Harhay would be the advisory board member and you would be the board member. Any other clarifications? Madam City Clerk, do we need a vote on that? Okay.
Is this public comment?
Kind of public comment. Tracy Folda. The only thing that I would like to change would fight Councilman Adams for the Boulder City Community Education Advisory Board. My husband's a teacher, my families are all teacher, and I've worked a lot with advocating for education with my own children. So that's something I had an interest in.
Well, she gave up one. So.
No objection from me. I think that would be a good fit. You have children, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we need a vote or are we okay? All in favor of the designations that we have gone over?
Aye.
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 Ms. Folda?
She can't vote.
Actually, she can vote, but.
Yes.
So it's unanimous then. All right, that brings us then to our final public comment. This comment period is for any item that a member of the public wishes to speak about. Again, the time limit is 5 minutes. Mr. Hunt.
Good evening. I'm Ainsworth Hunt. I'm a Boulder City resident. In December 2017, before Steve Morris's contract was put into effect, he billed the city $80,000 working on a misdemeanor case that had a hearing on December 20th that year. Between Friday, December 1st, and Wednesday, December 20th, 2017, there were 11 city working days. At Steve Morris' billing rate of $375 per hour, he would have had to have worked over 210 hours. Is that even possible? Now, having lost the misdemeanor case at district court on First Amendment rights and vindictive prosecution, the city attorney has retained outside counsel at city expense in order to try to force a new trial where the best outcome he can hope for is 300 hours of community service that would have to be supervised by a judge other than Victor Miller, as the municipal judge has recused himself in this case. I don't have the final billing figure from Marquis Auerbach Coughing, but the figure Steve Morris stated to the Boulder City Review was a lot lower than the $2,907.75 the city paid in March and April. I'm pretty sure that's not the final cost of a 48-page filing, and arguing that to the Nevada Supreme Court will add more to that. I would appreciate it if City Council would look into the concerns I am raising tonight, and if deemed appropriate, would give City Attorney Morris appropriate direction from his client, the city, as to how he should proceed, potentially including having him withdraw the petition for writ he filed through outside counsel. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening, Council. Kelly Carlson, Boulder City resident. I used to live in Bullhead, so sorry about that. It's late. Regarding agenda item 15, I like the time spent in these meetings that I already attend with the discussion and the full opportunity for me to get access to the same information that you do. So if you are going to move forward with workshops, I would respectfully request that they are put at a time similar to this, that working people, myself included, can attend rather than 10 a.m. on a Thursday or 9 a.m. on a Monday, because I'm working then, probably many community members are also working during that time. So then I lose my opportunity to get much of the same information that you're getting to attempt to base your decisions. And additionally to that, there used to be, I believe, an opportunity for the public to speak on a particular agenda item on the fly. It was opened up to questions and the public as we went along. I noticed that that has not been happening. Often I do not know prior to your discussion of this agenda item in the beginning public time that there's a question that I'm going to want to ask like this. So I realize that I guess that's at the mayor's discretion whether or not to open stuff up agenda item by agenda item to public comment or questions during the discussion. But if that's still a possibility, I would encourage you to bring that back. Thank you very much.
Ms. DeShane?
Judy DeShane. I will agree with Kelly that I was waiting at various times expecting you to ask or open it for comment. So if either way you do it is fine. It's just that if you aren't going to do it on each item, if you would let us know, and then we can all make, do our itemized comments at the very beginning of the meeting, it would be helpful. I also very much like the idea of having public meetings at whatever time you guys want. It doesn't matter to me. But to get information from staff, to hear your questions ahead of time, maybe for us to be able to give you our input, our thoughts and ideas on things you're discussing prior to you actually making a decision. When we say something at a council meeting, it doesn't do any good really, because you guys have already had to do your research. You've already had your discussion with staff and one thing and another. So there's really no opportunity for citizens to put in their 2 cents worth. So thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Ms. Folda?
Tracy Folda. I just want to say I'm very honored to serve Boulder City, and it's not something that I take lightly at all, and that I will be doing my homework for every item that comes before me. And I'm open to come to talk to me, and I hope that I look forward to the time to spend on finishing up Kieran McManus's term. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Milo Hurst. A lot of this was about historical earlier, and being somebody that has bought several of the buildings and redone those buildings, I think that some buildings shouldn't be saved. I know that's probably opposed to, so as you're hiring this person or getting experts, there are some buildings that due to safety and environmental reasons have no economic value. And I think that if you tie the redevelopment funds with the Historical Society and have a design review, that some buildings can get torn down without, because if you don't, nobody's going to ever buy them. They're going to be such difficult buildings to ever attack. So you're going to have to look at those buildings and analyze them as a builder or potential or as an investor, not just from a Historical Society point. The secondary part is just I made a few notes. When you Google Boulder City, you get all kinds of other boulders. You get Boulder, Colorado, and everything else. What we really need to push if we're marketing our area is Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. Their name recognition is Google. It just doesn't even show up on the first page. Boulder City is somewhere else. So and so many of the travelers now are using that as ways of finding places to visit, finding places to stay, finding the tourism attractions that we do have. So the home of Hoover Dam is the bigger push than Boulder City. The other one that we never talked about is we have a very unusual circumstance here where we have Boulder Dam Credit Union. It should be very much involved in, because it's such a strong financial institute, and the ability that they have to help us to obtain what we're dreaming about here is very important. The last one is we have a very unusual circumstance that somebody set up here a long time ago with our zoning, that because you could live at each one of these, any address, you could have a resident along with your business. I think if we push that to young, new entrepreneurs, then Boulder City will be able to get new jobs, new families, those type of things. And if that's tied in with the redevelopment money and the Historical Society standards, it will help. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we will then move to City Council reports. Councilman Adams?
No reports at this time.
Councilwoman Bridges?
No reports yet.
Councilman Harhay?
Yes, I would like to offer my apology to the folks for the last council meeting. I made some comments that could be perceived as hurtful or inarticulate and inartful, and there's no excuse for it. I apologize. I hope my apology is accepted. My grandkids said I was just a grumpy grandpa, so that's no excuses.
Councilwoman Folda, I know you've already made one comment, but if you would like to do so as in your new position. No comment. Thank you. I just have a couple of quick notes. The 4th of July, great time as usual here in Boulder City. You know, the parade, the pancake breakfast, the games at the park, the fireworks. We know how to do it. We've been doing it for a while. I guess this was number 71. So we're looking forward to 72 next year. You know, whenever we do these things, people go out, have a great time. I encourage that. I try and do it myself. When you are doing it, make sure you're not interfering with anybody else's fun. I heard a couple of comments about some people being unkind. We don't want to do that here in Boulder City. But again, overall, fantastic 4th of July. Weather cooperated as well. The Mr. City Manager had mentioned it earlier, as has been the custom, the last City Council meeting in July will be canceled. So with that, we will see everyone in August, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Wow.
What? Yes, I